Warning, this podcast contains scenes of explicit nonsense and lore.
Previously on the Resident Evil podcast.
Ability to do his job, and I don't know which one of those is better, you know? Like, they're both not bad or good.
I've got the answer right for you. It's the original.
That's the official answer.
You know, I was so disappointed when I finally unlocked Toy Uncle. And it's just an advert for Mega Man.
Batman, any comments on G4, G3?
Well, I just thought I was on drugs when he started running around the buildings. Like, are we going to get some sort of reimagining of the clock tower fight? And then he just sort of jumped onto the side of the building and started doing circles. I was like, what's going on here?
These remakes, man, they do me in. I tell you.
Resident Evil Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the Resident Evil Podcast, a podcast that has been remade so many times the true events of the zombie apocalypse in Bristol in episode 21 may never be known. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune, and yes, you're going to need a bigger boat. My lockdown diet starts Monday. Let's see who's joining us today. He got ripped on the T-virus in just 6 weeks. It stars Tyrant.
Hey, hello.
His country is virus-free, but our tests show that he's still full of it. Knowledge, that is. It's Rombie.
Hi, how's it going?
And our special guest for this evening, he's from Kentucky, but he's no chicken. It's Yoke!
You son of a bitch, hello.
Coming up on today's podcast, we'll be looking at all the latest Resident Evil news, both gaming and site news. There's some big news, of course, that's happened, with our main discussion being the recent reveal and the announcement trailer of Resident Evil 8. Or should I say Resident Evil Village? We're also going to be bringing back the most welcome sub-discussion, and we're going to be talking about a recent law change with the Las Plagas, which you may have seen be teased by Capcom. And we'll be ending, of course, with another edition of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So, without further ado, we'll start the news. First bit of news, obviously, is Resident Evil 8 trailer has been released. This was part of the PlayStation 5 event. We're not going to spend too much time talking about it here because it's going to be the main focal point of the podcast, but more generic points. At the moment, only been announced for Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, and Steam/PC. That's concerning, I think, for a number of people, myself included, as to whether it's going to be a cross-gen title and whether we're going to see it on PlayStation 4 and Xbox. You can see the trailer, we've got it on our own YouTube page, as well as my reaction video, if you want to have some reaction to that. But, yeah, everyone's thoughts on whether it is just going to be exclusively next-gen?
I think it is, Nick, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure there's even been a dialogue on that.
I was going to say the developer's video implied that the engine has been upgraded for next generation and therefore focused entirely on providing that.
Yeah, I would assume they would have said it was cross-gen right from the get-go anyway.
Yeah.
Like I was going to say, and that would be the same if there was ever going to be exclusivity. Obviously, there's not, but if they would do it straight away to effect, I think.
I think my hope was that it's just because it was a PS5 event, so next-gen event, they're going to go, oh, yes, yeah, you know, because I think the next bit of information that we've got is coming in August.
Well, yeah, but that follow-up developer thing mentions the Series X and Steam, though, as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
they would have said it there if it was coming
That's
to PS4 and Xbox One.
And I think the other part of it, I think, is just a general focus on the scope and scale of obviously what they're doing. It's obviously powered by those It's interesting though, because obviously some developers, especially a lot of the stuff to do with the Xbox, have kind of focused more on those generational titles, but there hasn't been a lot of that so far. Talk about the PlayStation title, so I feel like that's probably part and parcel.
I think I've mentioned this in our Discord. Resident Evil doesn't actually get a lot of releases very early on in a console's lifespan, so one assumes this is going to be quite early on, perhaps January to March 2021, and that is early for a lot of consoles with Resident Evil. Normally,
yeah, I was going to say the closest other than that was probably the US European releases of code, because they were within 3 to 4 months of the Dreamcast coming out, but the actual console had been out in Japan by that stage.
Yeah, and I, from my own personal, I remember specifically waiting till Code Veronica, and that didn't come out. That took a while for that to come out. Remake on GameCube was that's nearly a year, I think. Was it?
I think I'm trying to remember when the GameCube released. I think it was 2001. It was probably within a year.
Within the year, so.
But it's still not a few months. We're not talking like at near. They end up getting it out, within a year. Remake 3, which I assume is the plan by the financial year March, as you're saying, then within 3 to 4 months of the console's release, that's pretty big deal for Capcom.
So get saving, folks. Next gen's going to cost a lot of money. no price for anything for either Xbox or PlayStation. But
I was going to say there was a story today where the PlayStation CEO was talking about not so much cheaper console, but value for money, which makes it imply that maybe they're thinking about charging a little bit more than people are expecting for it. And obviously, Microsoft has not shied away from the fact that they're saying this is a premium product.
$599.
It's never going to be as bad as I don't think it's never going to be as bad as the PS3 and those sorts of reviews.
What a conference that was.
God, yeah.
That's why you stick with the PC.
But you say that, but the thing is, I don't know if that's. It used to be the case, but I feel like with the way the cost of graphics cards goes these days and how fast the movement is on the performance level, though, and especially when a new console generation comes out, because all of a sudden less of a void for at least the start of the generation between those platforms, the graphics cards that kind of go beyond that become very expensive, and it takes a while for it to catch up. So
that was a good point.
It's just one of those things. I think there's no real true. I mean, to me, the benefits of PC are less about cost than they are, say, modifications and tweaking your performance and getting extra filtering options that perhaps console, especially later in the scenario, can't do. And those benefits definitely outweigh any potential costs. So PC.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of the amazing mods that are going to be in Resident Evil 8.
Exactly. Yeah, that's totally it. I mean, you can when you know there's
Chris
a PC
actually
version
add a
coming.
boulder.
That's it, like it will be very interesting to see. But yeah, Nick, you might need to start saving.
next bit of new sales figures news. Oh yes, so globally the Resident Evil series has now sold over 100 million units, making it the most successful Capcom series ever. Remake 3 has sold 2.5 million copies worldwide. The last point of recording. Remake 2 is now at 6.6. Good old Resident Evil 7 flying the flag at 7.5 million copies.
Kind of surprised it outselling Monster Hunter.
It is, yeah, it's doing really well.
I think it's just the stability of these titles. I mean, 2 was obviously well received. 7, I mean, it's still a showcase for VR. So if people are picking up VR packages, they quite often got 7 included. I guess, or it's getting recommended to them. Yeah, it's crazy. The games are still selling very well.
2.5 million for Remake 3, not bad.
I think it's slightly lower than 2's at the same period.
Yeah.
Now, how many of those people, though, Nick, can actually remember playing it?
Falls off a cliff.
Because it's just faded away, hasn't it?
Well, this is what I've been saying. It hasn't quite had the same longevity, should we say, as Remake 2. Not quite that hook, I think, but still, it's doing quite well. Resistance news. 2 lots of news here since our last podcast. So, firstly, Nikolai was added as a new mastermind to the game, along with some bug patches as well. And Nikolai brings with him the Nemesis as his ultimate BOW to battle against Jill and the other survivors. On top of that, we've had another update fairly recently. On June the 12th, a new prison map was added. Matchmaking was still an issue at that point, but I think that's been resolved like today. Hasn't there now been a new matchmaking ability put into it to help you level up a bit better with players? I'm sure I saw something.
I did see something about that. They've been constantly making tweaks through those other patches, trying to improve it. So I assume this is just a continuation rollout of trying to push that forward. I mean, and Sean is well aware, this is like one of the worst things about that game is that the matchmaking was not exactly well thought out at the start.
If when it's loading, it tells you that like the mastermind is like, anything above level 20 and your partners are like, ranked 3 or 4, then there's no chance you're going to even probably get out of the first room.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
There's also been lots of issues on the PC version, in the sense that lots of cheaters and hackers, and Capcom have been quite happy for people to report them. send your videos and clips to Capcom themselves, and they'll try and get rid of them. Which is something, but I don't think the PC version is very popular from what I've been hearing. The console versions are still got a bit of an online community, but the PC Steam version isn't quite getting the traction that perhaps Capcom wanted.
So I think the game has not had the traction that perhaps Capcom wanted either. I mean, it's obviously it's not nearly as dire as something like Umbrella Corps, but obviously, yeah, the number of people I've heard kind of in that same vein as you, Nick, and this is no slight against you, but it's kind of like one of those things. Oh, I got Resident Evil 3, and today it was like I didn't even install.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, like it's a really common thing. I think Capcom may have missed that opportunity. I think it was a mistake to create independent launches for them. On an aesthetics value, I can kind of understand that, but I think if you had made the launcher for Resistance in Remake 3 that was part of it, people would have been more likely to try it, I think. Just the people that weren't so sure. But if you have to install a separate game, as part of it, people are just like, I won't bother. I think that was the mistake.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue I had when I first got it. I didn't even know where it was in the menu system, and someone had to tell me that, you had to download it separately. I'm like, what the fuck? Besides that, I didn't install it anyway because I'd rather play Umbrella Corps than fucking Resistance.
Whoa,
I'm that guy.
You are that guy. That's a tall call, man.
Between Yoke giving it a high five there and Nick, contemplating his next gen plans as to, whether he'll be able to carry on his physical copy, Umbrella Corps is a bit of a U-turn on this show.
Saying that, though, I wouldn't mind someone, if anyone could, send us a cover for Resistance that we can print out, and so we've got a little extra box for it. That would be wonderful. Just to have a little something in the collection.
Jokes aside, though, Nick, I do wonder whether they will, in an effort to boost numbers at a later date, like release it for a budget price separately, so you don't need to buy the 3-make. Like just chuck it on the network and Xbox Live for £15.
Sell it separately.
Complete collection.
Still, probably not a physical copy, unfortunately, Nick. But Nick, you disgust me, Nick.
Site news. We do have a bit of site news, actually. So we have a new editorial out. So it's our first kind of major update on our website since it launched over on ResidentEvilPodcast.com. And it's from myself, so that's always nice. So my in-depth analysis of Confidential Report. Yes, you can't get a podcast without me mentioning them. And lo and behold, we now have a 50-page editorial that you can download and read in your own pleasure. If you've been listening to the podcast for years and going, what the hell is Neptune talking about? Well, now you can find out. So it's basically a codified version of the 2 editorials I did years ago, much more succinctly written, should we say, and presents lots of interesting ideas and theories about the BOWs involved, the MS virus, which is the matchless soldier virus, for you to ponder over. Had some nice feedback from people, so thank you everyone who has downloaded. That's over on our features page on our website. Have you guys read it? Please lie. You can lie.
Yeah, this is where the cricket sound effect.
It was the most amazing editorial since Batman's timeline.
It's right up there.
That's genius, Rob. And since Capcom's stance now, Nick, is that everything is canon, pretty much. It may as well be canon now. So
it has less contradictions than Remake 3. That's a fact. Hey, nothing to show multiple Nemesis weren't in Raccoon City. Nothing to say they weren't.
Next you'll be trying to tell me Gaiden's canon. Oh wait, hang on.
Watch this space.
So, this podcast is slowly creeping back into controversy after having years now of being clean as a whistle, haven't they?
Well, it all started with this unraveling about how awesome Umbrella Corps is, obviously.
That's just facts right there.
More site news you probably have seen on your podcast app, on Podbean as well, but we've done our first canonical audio commentary. Yay! We dug the depths of the live-action films. We climbed up a bit to the 4D Executor video, which is on our YouTube page, and finally we did Resident Evil Degeneration, which was recorded a couple of weeks ago and is now available to download. So if you are subscribed to us on Podbean or iTunes, you can check that out as well.
I was just going to say, as a preview to all Leon fans, we can only apologise for his comparisons to a cardboard cutout.
or a plank of wood.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
But we just as a remark, we were all watching basically the PAL version, possibly with the exception of Mr. Spencer. Who knows what version he was watching? And so you might get a slight time difference if you're perhaps watching in America, which has a slightly different frame rate. That's been responded to quite well as well. So we enjoy doing them. It's a nice bit of fun relief to watch some of these. We do have more coming out. And Yoke, I believe you were involved.
But what?
Yes, you
He's
were.
erased that from his mind already.
So
It was that traumatic for him.
I will deny everything.
Except for his love for Umbrella Corp.
Except for that,
Open
no,
up
that's I'm not ashamed of that.
So no, in truth, you can't escape your past, Yoke. But yeah, in reality, we do have Resident Evil Extinction audio commentary coming soon, featuring Yoke. So he provided his insight.
Alcohol may have been involved in that recording. I will say that.
That does conclude all the news. So we'll now turn our attention to a discussion. Recent reveal of the Plagas.
Las Plagas, literally the pest or the plague. It attaches itself to the victim's nervous system, working its way through the lungs and the heart, to eventually gain control of the central nervous system through the spinal cord. Symptoms of the infected include coughing up blood, fainting, hallucinations, appearance of blood around the eyes, swelling and discoloration of the blood vessels, and a discoloration of the iris, typically in red. When all else fails, look at the eyes. Those are the symptoms, but what does it actually do? In short, it makes them very strong and highly resistant to pain. And not just humans. Because it is highly adaptable, it can possess other organisms as well. How is it so effective? One theory is that Las Plagas has a collective intelligence, what you might call a hive mind, communicating via ultra-high frequency sound waves. Those are the basics. Now, let's get a bit more specific. The dominant strain Plaga was designed to allow the host to retain complete control of the parasite. In addition to being able to control their own, they can also control a subordinate parasite and others. And they are capable of causing dramatic mutations in themselves at will. There are very few side effects to the host's mental capabilities, but it can give them incredible strength. A host carrying this Plaga could remain virtually unchanged as long as they suppress the parasite's mutagenic powers. If, however, they wish to do so, they are capable of bizarre and extreme mutations of their bodies through its use. Because of the level of control of the dominant strain Plaga, Belikova's scientists were able to create a sort of master-slave relationship between humans and bioorganic weapons. Not unlike, say, a queen bee and her workers. This means that a human host who has injected the dominant strain could gain control of a liquor, to the point of making it as submissive and docile as a puppy.
So, keen observers of Resident Evil news would have noticed quite subtly that Capcom have opened up a bit of a can of worms, should we say. So, this relates to Remake 3 and Resident Evil 4. So, if you've played Remake 3, you'll know that the Nemesis seemingly has the ability to create any alpha parasitic zombies, which are just a nuisance, quite frankly. And this was an addition to Remake 3. And to be honest, people just didn't really think much of it. It's just almost their version of Crimson Heads, and they gave off quite a nice death to people if you got too close to them. Afterwards, Capcom have now said, well, actually, the NE Alpha, which was always a genetically modified parasite, which was obviously injected into a Tyrant, was based on the Las Plagas parasite we see in Resident Evil 4. Now, what's quite interesting about this theory is it possibly hints at a Remake 4, because there's no real reason why they would need to mention it. But secondly, long-term fans will know that as soon as Resident Evil 4 came out, the links between the NE Alpha parasite and Las Plagas were quite rampant in the community back then, and there's all sorts of toing and froing as to whether they were connected. But up until only recently, they were very much an individual organism, the Las Plagas being a millennia-old ancient parasite found in southern Europe, possibly Africa as well. And then the NE Alpha was a genetically modified parasite created in Umbrella Europe. Now, the new bit of information is that Umbrella seemingly knew about the Las Plagas parasite and based the NE Alpha parasite on it to basically make a synthetic version of the Las Plagas parasite. So think of it as a bit like the Plagas you see in Damnation. That was the goal. So Umbrella knew about it and made it. That is a change of the law, and it's raised a bit of discussion in the Discord and in the community generally about how and why such a law change was implemented. Sean, we'll start with you. How was your take on this?
Without at risk of being a parody of myself, I've taken a bit of a break this last month from the series because the news of Remake 4, the leak of Remake 4 sort of pushed me over an edge of sorts. And after Remake 3, doing its best to dismantle and fracture what has been a fairly robust lore up until now. Reading it, Nick, in all honesty, was a bit disheartening because it just tells me they're going to make further changes as we go further into the remakes of the series, and this clearly has been done because they're setting up something for Remake 4, and they're going to have to change it quite a bit because if Umbrella knew about Las Plagas enough that they could make a synthetic version of it in the NE Alpha, doesn't that kind of render Wesker's mission into Spain completely moot? Because by this point he's got the Red Queen out after Umbrella Chronicles, so theoretically all the data and everything should be there.
And this is the big lore problem. So I think a lot of people jumped on it and said, "Oh my god, this is dramatically changes everything." It doesn't specifically, because it's not, the NE Alpha isn't the Las Plagas, but what Capcom are now saying is that Umbrella knew about it. Possibly, who knows, is it perhaps that they're going to make Resident Evil 5, which kind of hints at the Plagas being there earlier. Perhaps they knew about it. But as you just said, Sean, they seemingly had enough data on it to be able to make a fake version of it.
I think there's two facets to this that are the only way you could correspond this where it's going to be explained. One, Umbrella's intention wasn't originally to make a synthetic version. They wanted to get the actual one, but the problem is that the control of them was problematic, obviously, as we witness, and you have to have someone who's like the control person. Secondly, I would say the only other way to justify it is to say that the synthetic version was flawed somehow. It's inferior compared to the actual thing, which is why Umbrella would try and get the original version, which would then explain why Wesker would see that as a much more potential option than saying taking that synthetic information. He still knows that would inferior, and that's the only way you could line those ideas up.
And still keep
that consistent
within the same narrative, without changing.
I mean, exactly. A lot of it's not one of those ones like I look at it. It's not like a serious retcon. It's just changing information to influence potential story, further storytelling if you were going.
And the series is no stranger to doing this. I mean, we've said numerous times on this podcast that one of the things that the series can do is it can, in a later game, add something to the lore that makes a previous game better. A lot of people felt like Resident Evil 4 was vindicated in many ways after 5 added some things to the Plagas, and it took ideas that game did and expanded them and everything. And this is in a sense no different to that, but it's just kind of irrelevant, unnecessary, I feel. And if this was done back in the day, Nick, back in the days when the theories were right, it probably would have been seen as a really clever link. But now it feels like a bit of a stretch now, because evidently, because of the leaks, we know there is a 4 remake on the way. And it's just, again, it's the question I constantly ask is, where do these changes end? How far can you go before you shatter the lore completely? And comments
somewhere
by Capcom, I was just going to finish by saying, comments from Capcom saying, everything's canon, and it doesn't matter whether it's the OG or the remake, they're all canon. There has to be some give somewhere, because that's just not how it works, unfortunately.
My thoughts is that they're going to try and fill this line through and try and connect this again to even 7 and now 8 somewhere down the line, to try and tie all these things together, which is yet to be seen. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's just one of those things that they're obviously going to do. We've talked about this before as well. Obviously the big gap in the idea of what happened to Umbrella was perhaps a not great decision made in 2004 4 to 5, when it came to it, like just basically explaining Umbrella's demise in some text, and I think they're trying to give more gravitas to the fall of Umbrella and the research if they are going to expand upon that in a remake of 4 by doing things like this.
There's an unbelievable irony to all this in that, Resident Evil 4, the original version, kind of ruined the lore for a lot of people, with the direction it chose to take Umbrella and the series. And in many ways, it was such a devastating thing it did that we're still, in so many ways, still feeling the course correct from that 15 years later. It's not something I feel like the series has ever really truly recovered from, was, when Mikami decided to scrap it and do what he did. And I just find it like hilariously ironic that, we are going to be almost certainly looking at a remake of 4 in a couple of years' time. And already it's starting to change things and upset the lore again. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not looking forward to another fucking 15-year course correct after this.
Blasted Resident Evil 4.
I know, I just find it hilarious how it seems to just come full circle. This game.
Well, to play devil's advocate, for the longest time, I've always seen people want Resident Evil 4 to make more sense and to fit into the lore more. And with this remake, possibly, that's going to be happening. Do you think that's exactly not what they should be doing with the remake?
No, see, that's where I get a bit funny. It's a great sentiment and a good idea, but I think I'm a big believer of you have to live with your mistakes sometimes. And like Resident Evil 4 has its place now. It has led to some better and some worse things. And if you don't have that organic process that you go through, we're just going to live in like a sort of revisionist timeline that I'm not sure is healthy for lore.
My concern too is the track record is not positive that that's going to happen. If 2 and 3 remakes were more authentically placed to the originals and only embellished and added interesting lore to it and had those chances to potentially, not saying there's anything wrong with the original, but like, not to create more links, and even between themselves. Like, there's a massive disconnect between the 2 remakes, and they supposedly were being developed around the same time. It's like, well, why didn't you think about the idea of doing crossover between these? Like, that doesn't put confidence into me that a remake of 4 is going to better things that the original did wrong. They're probably going to make all new mistakes. Like, it's not.
You mean like that skit by any chance?
I wasn't even trying to infer that, but yes, like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there wasn't confidence built by the previous 2 remakes that tell me that a remake of 4 is going to improve the original. The chances are it's not. It's either going to be very different or very different and much worse. One or the other. There's not an option there where it's going to be very different and probably better, because the original is so well renowned. You take the lore part out of it, and just as a game, like, it's well respected in the gaming community. Like, it's one of those significant tentpole releases that people went, wow, that changed the industry. Capcom thinks that it has the opportunity to strike twice on this. I think it's a fool's errand. I think they should leave well enough alone, but they'll do what they think's right and with the consequences.
Yeah, this of all the remakes has the one to spectacularly backfire the most because of its status within not just the Resident Evil community but the video game industry at large. It is, as I said in a previous episode, it's a video game darling, isn't it?
It is. And it'd just be interesting with this change, with what they're going to do with the Plagas. They're going to go, because I think in the timeline it's not really discovered until by the Salazars and the whatnots, much until after 1998, after the Umbrella demise. So if they're going to keep it going, is Resident Evil 4 going to become the downfall of Umbrella game that's been rumoured? Are they going to add things? I mean, another popular theory that goes around, I think John mentions it even in his timeline, is that perhaps the Plagas was an original parasitic organism that ingested the Sonotrap flowers and kind of adapted to the progenitor virus, which would explain a hell of a lot, which would be a nice little link. That could be another thing they could implement. But then, if you're going to remake Resident Evil 4, are you going to remake Resident Evil 5? I'd say the answer is probably yes.
And then it goes back to Sean's earlier question, which is, when do you stop with the remakes?
Until we get to 7 again.
But that's what I mean. This is what I was saying before, where this is the opportunity where they go, right, okay, so we're definitely going to retie this all back to 7. We're 7 and 8 kind of focus is, so that we make sure we've got this true narrative. But yeah, it's inevitable that then you have to remake 5, and then you have to remake 6 as well. Like,
just skip 6 entirely, please. But the way people have been acting online, they also want a Code Veronica remake, which is quite amazing. But I do agree that a Resident Evil 4 remake, no matter what they do, is probably going to fail. Because you got the people who, like, if they do the progenitor flower connection, you got people who don't want that connection at all. Like, it should be a separate thing. So I don't think it's going to make everyone happy at all.
This is the thing that I've been noticing, especially since, and we'll probably talk a little bit of this in regards to the reveal this week, but it's like, and I've said this before, that the franchise has so many different things to so many different people, the different types of games and different types of stories, that there's no way that any release is ever going to please everyone. The only way you're going to potentially lower risk is not remaking 4 at all. But if you release it, you definitely know you're not going to please everyone. There's always going to be some group or some person or some like fans of a particular part of the franchise or the original game or whatever that you're going to annoy.
Well, see, that's I think I was talking to Sonny Bauer about that one day. Like, how amazing would it be if they don't even remake the Resident Evil 4 proper? They just make a completely different game and just call it Resident Evil 4 Remake.
3 is almost like that. Like, to me, 3 remake is like that. There's not a lot. It has touchstones, but it's definitely almost a new game in some respects, especially
I've seen a lot of interesting opinions about people wanting 3.5 to replace 4 now, which I don't know how that would go over. Like, that would be kind of amazing and funny just to see the reaction.
Well, if they really want to go on a limb, they could kind of like do a semi-type Gaiden remake with 3.5, because there was always hints and tints that was all going to kind of link in terms of infection and, you know, Leon being pre-infected at the beginning of 3.5. Why not? If you want to call it Resident Evil 4, whatever. You know, they're not exactly calling Resident Evil 8, are they? So I think the number convention's being thrown out the window. Why not make Resident Evil 4 Remake, but just have it as the downfall of Umbrella game and keep Resident Evil 4 OG as it is?
But then you'll just have people arguing about whether or not the Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles tellings of events and the extra scenarios that relate to like Leon and stuff, and Claire and Chris and Jill, in those, are they still canon? Are they not canon? Like, there's never
just say it's all canon and
just
go on. It's fine. It's all canon. Just move on.
Wait, hang on. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing right now, isn't it? Like,
the thing is, at some point, and I know Capcom have a job to do with promoting like the new games, and like, you know, we've said before, they're not going to turn around and say Resident Evil 3 remake is non-canon, don't buy it. But at some point there will need to be some sort of clarification on like what the canon is moving forward, because, you know, we've already touched upon like the differences and the changes between OG3 and Remake 3. If they ever did like an Archives 3 book, you're not going to have like the fucking page split down the middle and have both games, you know, mentioned side by side and both being canon. It just can't work.
The irony is, Sean, though, you're making this comment about the fact that you have to create a situation where you explain things. Capcom's looking at doing a full remake is almost that thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, remaking 4, if you use it as an opportunity to change things, like say with Umbrella's story, it has to explain why that's doing that, and someone will have to make a statement somewhere along.
All they had to do is in those archive books to just be like, well, there have been reports that this or this happened to this character. There's been reports that Nemesis had more than 3 forms or some bullshit.
But that if you go to the Resident Evil 3 wiki page, that's exactly what they've done. I mean, they've done a really decent job of doing it, and they're following the kind of current view that it's all canon. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And it goes, one account of Carlos then says he goes off to the RPD. Another account of Carlos says he doesn't. One account says Jill then transported on the underground. The other account says she went on an overground tram. It's awful. And that's, you know, and I'll give them kudos for having a go at putting it into one document. But by all means, check it out. Check out the Resident Evil 3 page under the story bit and read it and go, if that is acceptable to people as being what you want from a Resident Evil storyline, something that has organically built up over the past 25 years now into a relatively cohesive storyline, localizations and all. If that is what you want, then that's fine. And I just don't think it's acceptable. I have a video of this coming out, folks, at some point, so you can. Yes, we will. We'll keep you posted on that. So yeah, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head here. The actual change by Capcom, which in many ways is almost like adding Sergei to the mansion incident, isn't it? It's not huge on itself, but what it represents is quite significant, and the way forward with storyline and narrative is quite important. So that's why we thought we'd have a quick sub-discussion on it, just to kind of like lay it on the table to everyone. Because, that there's a big chunk of the fandom that, that don't care. More power to you, I say. That's fine. Enjoy the games by all means. We look at it probably too in-depth, and that's exactly what Capcom are probably telling you as well. Going, don't listen to these people. They're too involved, but,
Yeah, don't take it too seriously.
Don't take
That's
it
what
too
I've
seriously.
done. I've backed away because I've gotten too much of a headache trying to think of everything. Thank you, Resident Evil 6, for that. I'm just waiting for it to come out that Sadler was an Umbrella scientist.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be one. That would arguably be one way of tying that.
I mean, that's going along with that joke meme that's going around that obviously there's going to be Nest 3 underneath the castle.
Hell,
why wouldn't you at that point? If you're saying Sadler's a former Umbrella scientist with his own lab, that's neat.
We hope you enjoyed that. That was just a little brief discussion on Plaga. Something you may not have picked up on in the news because it was kind of swept under the rug a bit by Capcom. But just something we wanted to bring to your attention as well as the canon scenario.
It was a throwaway line too, wasn't it? On Resistance, wasn't it?
Ridiculous. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it does feel like an afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, they're connected. Anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, the big news, of course. So we now turn our attention to the brand new reveal for Resident Evil 8. I mean Resident Evil Village.
Long ago, a young girl went with her mother to pick berries for her father, who was hard at work. But the forest greeted them with a dark, cold silence. The bushes empty. Yet determined to find the berries, the rascal broke free of Mother's grasp and vanished into the trees. Mother's worried cries faded fast as the girl ran on, over vine, under branch, and into the forest deep.
What is it with that creepy story?
It's just a local tale.
You're really into that stuff?
Quit being so paranoid.
No! Friendly. Who are you? Who sent you? What are? They're coming. Who is? Chris? Sorry, Ethan. Why?
So the trailer dropped right at the end of the PlayStation 5 reveal. You can watch my reaction video. What you don't see is the fact that the previous hour was me going on, when is it? Come on. That kind of thing. I filmed the whole thing. But there we go. So it took its time.
There were some good games in that lineup. I'm sorry. You sat through an hour of like some pretty solid trailers.
I did. No, that's a fair point. I did. There's some good stuff. Especially if you like 3D platforming games, which I do. So that's good. But yeah, the trailer dropped at the end, and you can obviously see it on our YouTube channel. Personally, we'll do some preliminary thoughts from everyone here. My personal view was that it looks absolutely fantastic. I am delighted that we are carrying on in first person. I felt that actually it worked brilliantly well with the RE engine. I think it works well using first person to actually get really into the exploratory mode, and it brought back for me, like in 7, that sense of picking up useless items just to hear to see what they say and have a good nose round. And I'm really excited about seeing what we can find in the undergrowth, in that cabin thing that we see. There looks to be lots of things to be able to pick up. I'm really excited about that. So. And of course, my boy Ethan's back. A one-shot character, an avatar. Oh no, my friend, he's an important character.
That's a dangerous opinion to have there, Nick.
It's a very dangerous.
Ethan?
Love Ethan. I think. It's one of those. If I ever to compile a list of games that really and profoundly affected me during my 30-odd years of playing games, Resident Evil 7 would be it. I just fell straight into the role of Ethan, and that first-person view really helped amplify that what they were going for with 7. So I am delighted that they're sticking with first person, and for Sean's sake, because I know he has it, I'm hoping that they're going to be announcing in August that this is going to be in VR as well, because Resident Evil 7 in VR really is something else. But yes, we'll talk. We're going to go through the kind of trailer, talk about the key points in more so. But my thoughts, and you can see in my reaction, is that I was speechless at the time because I think it looks fantastic. I think it was a good representation of next gen graphic capabilities as well. But I can't wait. Stars?
I think it looks really interesting, and as someone who encourages franchises and whatnot to go forth into new directions and things like that, I like the fact that it doesn't look, it's clearly continuing on from what 7 did, but it looks different enough from 7 to be its own thing. My initial reaction was muted, I will say, on the night, but there's a specific reason for that regarding leaks that we'll go into later. But I think it looks fine. I mean, it's such a brief little announcement trailer. There's nothing massively juicy in there, bar a couple of the bigger moments. But it sets the tone well. The atmosphere looks good. You get your skulking around the woods at night, Nick, by the look of it. Which
I hope so.
For a long time.
I hope so.
And the story looks interesting. I'll say that. And a couple of the theories regarding the identity of the witches, if that pans out as what people think will make this one of the most darkest, miserable entries in the series so far. I think it'll prove to be quite divisive if that's the case. I think.
Yoke, what were your initial thoughts after you watched the trailer?
I felt nothing.
Oh, nothing.
I was numb after. I was like, okay, that happened, and I went on to doing something else.
Brutal.
I don't know. Like, that's just my reaction to Resident Evil nowadays. It's like, okay, that's a thing that's happening. It's like everyone's like, oh, it looks amazing. I'm like, okay, that's standard. It should look good. It does look interesting. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff, but that to me is just like I don't know what the hell's going on. So that's why it's interesting. Yeah, I find like the rumors and leaks a little bit more tantalizing than what I saw, because at the very end you have Chris, spoilers, shooting Mia multiple times, and it's just like, oh, this is probably going to be like Resident Evil 6 all over again, where this means nothing.
Oh, right. Is it a bit like the Leon and Chris?
Yeah, they're probably going to hype it up. Same thing for 5. Like, oh, Jill's dead. Oh, 6, Chris and Leon are fighting. Oh my God, Chris just shot Mia. Isn't that crazy? Like, nah, it's probably not going to be anything. Mia's probably fine.
They do that in movies though as well. Though I mean, it's quite. I'm thinking recently Rise of Skywalker, the kind of dark ray thing. Does she turn? No.
For all we know, it could be a bloody mold hallucination, couldn't it?
Easily.
No, it's true. Or could be, Mia still has, regeneration, so it's like, oh, I'm fine. Hold on, let me just, take these bullets out. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, it's actually a good point there, considering like the amount of damage she gets, unleashed upon in 7, axes in the neck and things like that. This could just merely be a flesh wound to her. Although you'd like to think he's using the Albert model with the
ram rounds. Yeah.
Rombie, what was your thoughts?
It was quite a jam-packed trailer. I think I worked out very early on in the trailer when it started. I was like, oh, this is clear. It's just that look of the RE engine about it. I think it was like the first shot of the interior village. There's a lot of little things throughout that trailer have been intentionally put in to be both tantalizing and potentially misleading. And that's the sign of, it's kind of exactly what Yoke's saying. It's like, it's to get people interested in talking, and there's a lot in there, but I guess it's not the point of a trailer, really. Yeah, I'm still intrigued. It's interesting enough. I'm not sold on the setting, but I'm interested to see more human characters being involved, as it kind of showcases throughout the trailer, which is an interesting thing to me. I think more than anything, really, that there's actually other people.
Well, that's
the series doesn't do that a lot.
That is a nice segue, because that was my first major discussion point. I think we can. So let's start with the return of Ethan. Someone I'm very excited about coming back. But I certainly take people's points from Resident Evil 7. He was supposed to be this kind of avatar type character, someone that you were there. It didn't really matter who he was. He himself wasn't particularly important to the storyline, other than experiencing what he needed to experience. So the argument has been, and I'll take it on board, that his story's done. He's rescued his wife and that's it. But one of my complaints about a lot of Resident Evil titles, not necessarily the games, but more the CGI films, but they've come at the same time, is that so many games have been one and done in terms of villains and viruses, whether that be a slightly different C virus, or we've got the A virus or something like we never see Arius again or beforehand, or Downing's never turned up again. Simmons could and should have been in it going forward, and it's all just very once you've done that game, that's it. You can now forget about anything that you learn. The fact that Ethan returns and Mia returns suggests that we are having a bit of a continuation of that discussion and that storyline with Mold, hopefully with Molded as well, just to get a bit of, I don't know, it's strange, isn't it? Because the C virus is very different to the Plagas, but the kind of the outcomes are quite similar, one would say. You wouldn't. The Juavo are very similar to a Magini. Some of them even have quite similar mutations, don't they? With kind of like a long arm instead of a long tentacle thing. And they all kind of run the same. And the chainsaw Magini axe, and it has the same animation as the chainsaw Juavo. It all kind of felt quite organic, the same that trilogy of games. So I'm just really pleased that we're getting a bit of consistency in titles, especially as we're moving into the next generation as well.
Yeah, I can understand that, but for example, with Simmons, you kind of expected him to keep showing up, and they didn't. For Ethan, he definitely seemed like a one and done character, and it does seem kind of odd for him to be in another game.
I would take that point, absolutely, yeah.
I do like Ethan. I'm not one of these people out there that just outright hate him for some reason. But for him to be in another outbreak when it seemed like he's just done and he's on vacation, it seems kind of odd. I don't know if Mia dragged him or what.
Well, this is the point. I mean, when it comes to character justifications, the idea is that you if you've got a good enough reason to bring that character back, you will. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious from the trailer that Chris brings some sort of level of conflict. We don't know why he ends up village per se, but I think obviously they've found a reason it has to connect. Obviously there's very clear indications and leaks as well telling us as much, but it is in the trailer that obviously there's a baby involved, or the idea of them having a child. So there's clearly an indication of a concept behind why this is a potentially risky thing given their previous history. And obviously at the end of 7 as well, they're basically being safeguarded by Chris and the team that he's working with. So there's obviously still a little bit of story you can at least close off from that, what happened next. So
from what I got from the trailer is that Chris brings a conflict into Ethan's life in what he does at the end of the trailer, and then the stuff in the village is Ethan's hunt for answers as such. I don't think he's caught up in another biohazard or whatever. I think he's actually actively searching for answers.
You don't think Ethan and Mia live in the village?
No, I think they live in a completely different place, and I think
the house that they're in, it looks very modern and new. If you go back and look at the trailer, it's like just a nice normal house.
The editing's quirky in that it looks like the cabin you're shown at the beginning is where Ethan and Mia live.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case at all. I think they probably live in civilization somewhere.
There are
or
shots.
something.
Yeah, there are shots in the trailer. If you look, aside from Chris, there's like a whole bunch of like masked men, and they're traipsing through a house.
Yeah, it looks like a
the
modern
house is
house, doesn't it?
It's a modern house. It's
Yeah.
it's them coming into the house and searching through the house for an unknown reason, and also obviously deal with the scene where Chris is shooting at the end.
I'd be okay with that. Okay, yeah. Like,
and then
they're just chilling. Chris comes in, shoots his wife, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
And that's how I interpreted it. And then when Ethan goes to the village, and I think isn't there even one of the write-ups implies that he's looking for Chris, and his searches lead him to this village.
I'm not sure if it says he's looking for Chris. Chris comes in and changes things. I get the feeling that if it's not him searching for Chris, it's something that Chris tells him that basically says you're the only person who we can use to get in there because of your previous experience. It's going to be one of those situations. It's not.
One of the other theories I read somewhere, it might have even been on our Discord actually, is that Ethan and Mia's child gets abducted and is taken to that village.
Possible. Also, yeah, good point about Ethan. Why would you use him? He is just a civvy, but perhaps because he has been infected before, perhaps he has a degree of resilience towards whatever is happening in the village. Because if you look at the artwork on the developers' video that they released, and they were very reluctant to release it, but they did. There's a fetus right in the middle, which kind of lines up with the D series from Resident Evil 7. So perhaps it's the A series of the, perhaps it's an old folk style. This is my theory. So with regards to the werewolves and witches, they're not true. There's no such thing as a werewolf, but it is something that's been built up perhaps through very slow release of hallucinations type scenarios. There are BOWs, don't get me wrong. And that's where that kind of storyline comes from. So if anyone goes in, they're going to perhaps experience not just the BOWs that live there, but the hallucinations that come with it, causing them to go bozo. But perhaps Ethan can go in.
It's like a cover story for people to not go into this remote village because there's monsters in the village. Yeah, okay, I can see.
That's a nice idea, Nick.
That could be it.
There's a very good sort of interesting episode of Black Mirror, if anybody's watched that, and it involves soldiers being essentially brainwashed so they see enemies as mutants, which is supposed to make them more effective in combat. Oh. You could have a similar sort of situation here, whereas, like you say, Nick, when intruders come into the village, if they get infected with like the mold or whatever, then they see everybody as horrific monsters, and it's supposed to make them flee or something.
Because the character right at the beginning, who's in the cabin, because we can't have a cabin shootout episode.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought. Oh god, not another one. I mean, I reckon that's the first encounter. I think that's right at the beginning of the game. I think that's the first Ganado in the fireplace type scenario.
You arrive at the village, and this is the first person you come across, and the first cabin you come across.
I just wonder, I mean, if that theory is correct, and that's just something that I kind of thought up on the fly, I hope we get... Because there's an element of truth. We've got witches, and there's obviously a bit of supernatural practices going on. But that could easily build up over many, many years if you've got something like an A series or B series that doesn't quite have the potency of D or an E or anything like that. That could build up this kind of cult group.
Well, I guess on that note, Nick, can we talk about the location? Because obviously there's an impact of choosing the video. The developers' video clearly reveals it Romanian influenced anyway. The currency is the Romanian lei, and obviously the country itself is well known for like vampire mythos, obviously with Vlad Tepes and Dracula's castle.
Yeah.
So, and there's a castle obviously above this village that we see. So there's obviously an intent here to talk about like this idea of that sort of monstery kind of thing. And if we've got these things that look like this idea of witchcraft and I guess they're implying maybe it's like a gypsy village kind of.
That's maybe skipping ahead a little bit because the rumor that this was a Revelations game, it just dawned on me. Could Dracula the book actually be a basis for this? Like, what if those girls are not the villains or the witches? They're actually Dracula's brides, to say.
Mm-hmm.
Very possible, very possible. We, as you say, the Revelations games have always been influenced by a particular book. Why not Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's
Yeah,
very good book as well.
That would also imply maybe the smirking guy is your Dracula substitute.
Van Helsing.
I was going to say Van Helsing.
It's Gary Oldman, isn't it? In
Yes. Yes, yes.
That's a good shout, that Yoke. Well done.
I have a spark of brilliance every now and then. So let me tell you about Umbrella Corps.
We're back down to that. Back down. We'll come on to the location because there's a really interesting point that the developers made. I want to spend some time on. But so we don't really see Ethan much other than he's in his kind of first person mode, and we don't really see a lot of Mia except perhaps at the end. But
the back of her head.
You see the back of
she's talking about the story at the start.
Yeah, and that kind of feeds into this idea of these kind of witch stories and stuff, and it's all inherently linked. Chris is interesting for many reasons. He's getting on a bit as old Mr. Redfield, and it's always good to see lots of memes, and Capcom must love memes because that generates interest. But what I liked about it, and you can see these on reaction videos, is that you can tell it's Chris straight away. And we don't have another 6 months of going, Redfield, Hunk Redfield, no. Or is that a clone of Chris Redfield? Because he looks too young.
Is it an imposter? Or...
We haven't got any of that bullshit. It's just, that's Chris. Yeah.
I wanted to ask this pertinent question, because this is the first thing that popped in my head after finishing the trailer. The start of the trailer says, his story comes to a close. Is that actually talking about Chris? Not Ethan? Not someone else? Is it talking about Chris?
They're not going to kill Chris off. I 100% believe they'll never kill him off. Besides old age.
Something interesting with it.
I wish that is true, and that would be very nice, but going from like past things Capcom's done, I'm just like, there's no way they're doing that. Ethan will die, then Chris will be like, oh, there goes my team again.
Darn.
I'll go back to drinking myself.
I'm going to go back to being an alcoholic and, trying to find another person to take over my spot.
I always assumed it was they were talking about Chris straight away.
So you went with Chris as well.
But
I wanted to know what people thought about that.
You don't get. The thing is, it's an interesting way of doing it because you don't get Chris till right at the end of the trailer. So to give you that title card and then not give you Chris until like 2 minutes later, it's hard to make that association unless you watch it again. Because by the time you get to the end of the trailer, probably on your first rewatch, I don't even think you'd remember that sort of.
You wouldn't be thinking about it, yeah.
And I don't think it's Ethan because I don't think people. As much as I like him, I don't think people care about Ethan that much. For him to Ethan Winter's story comes to an end. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Yoke's response to the idea about Ethan even coming back was, which is like, was it that important? Like, why would you put that at the start of the trailer if it's not of some importance to something serious? And the only thing I can assume is Chris, because Chris is the only thing in that trailer that, other than Ethan, has been around for more than one game that's a male. It's important. So my understanding, went back and looked at it again afterwards, was, maybe that's Chris they're referring to. His story comes to a close. This is the end of Chris Redfield's saga as far as the franchise. What that actually means, whether or not it's he dies or it's something else.
I wonder, because there was a lot of feeling in 6 that should have been it.
Agreed, yeah.
Not because people don't dislike Chris, they love him, but the way 6 was directed and filmed, it didn't do a lot for me, 6, but, the end of it with Pierce was brilliant. It was really well directed, and you felt for him, and like, no, Pierce, no! That kind of thing. The acting was great, and I wonder if they've just taken that on board and gone, right, we're going to do it, but do it properly this time.
I mean, the thing with 6 is it still frustrates because the entire game sets it up as though Chris is going to retire gracefully and Piers will take over that role. And that's really what should have happened. I mean, to a lot of people, Chris's story was done at the end of Resident Evil 5. That was a natural sort of bowing out point for him and Jill. To bring him back just to kill him off leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, to be honest. So I think they'll be cleverer than that.
Hope so, anyway.
The only reason I thought Chris, because obviously at that point we didn't know who was in it. It was purely because there's a lot of fan demand for his story to be over, and so that was the kind of thing that kind of like just came to me. His story comes to a close. I was like, Capcom have listened. They're going to get rid of it. Could they be pulling an ultimate misdirect and have, dare I say, Wesker?
Please, Nick, for fuck's sake, how many times do we have to go down this fucking road?
Sorry, I think I misheard you there. What was that? You go lay down. Hold on.
Again, this goes back to the whole thing about like when they killed off Wesker, they kind of
Instantly
they
regretted
kind
it.
of realize what they actually had, and if
I
they
will
have to keep
say-
trying to bring him back, that's kind of problematic.
I will say Chris's attire is not lost on me, though.
No.
He looks like he's more or less wearing, the same sort of looking gear as like Wesker did in Umbrella's End.
Looking
I
very
thought that
gruff.
was Resident Evil 6 Chris's outfit, the coat and everything.
I suppose I need to go back and have a look, actually.
I like the way he looked. He looked instantly like Chris. He looked a bit older, and I like that the artwork's quite
Well,
good.
He should be.
Yeah, he should be older.
This is
yeah.
supposed to be a couple of years after 7. How old was he supposed to be in 7? Like in his 40s?
Yeah.
Like
okay.
40 something. Like so now he's like mid to late 40s. He should.
I honestly now think, as well as a result of the change back to the more recognisable Chris, that in a next-gen re-release of 7, they will tweak it because it's too weird to leave it now.
I'm not sure. I think
His changed appearance in 7 just stands out like a sore thumb now.
I'm not sure they can without doing it all again because it's all in FMVs.
And yeah, it is. Yeah, but I mean, they were able to doctor Steve's hair in the FMVs and Code Veronica. So as long as they've got the original assets, all they'd need to do is re-render them.
There you go. Watch this space.
What if Redfield from 7 is actually Albert Wesker?
Jesus.
You just go back to your Umbrella Corps and enjoy that.
I will, thank you.
You absolutely murder me, you lot. I've just come back from a hiatus and this is what you give me.
So before we get on to the more interesting villains of this title, there is another female protagonist that we saw. I've seen on a lot of the Facebook groups people saying, "Is this Mia?" But she's far too young, I think, to be Mia. But this looks to be a new character that we don't know anything about her, to be brutally honest. But she gets a bit of screen time in the trailer. Not too much to say about her, but perhaps like with a lot of these Revelation games, is that it's not usually a single player campaign, but there's always multiple players you can be during the game. So I wonder if she's going to be playable. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the new information that maybe comes out in August.
Yeah.
All the characters that we've seen in the trailer will get names, and whether they're going to have playable sections.
Yeah, and a bit more explanation as to what the village is, because obviously putting it in the title is important.
Yes, well, yeah, less said about that, the better. I think I'm not sure if I'm quite over. Is this Resident Evil 8 or not? But it is. But there we go. Yes, it's not too much. She looks a bit like Claire-ish. It looks a bit like Mia-ish as well, but someone. Just be aware, folks, if you're trying to avoid leaks, and there is names floating around as to who that person may be, but I'm not going to repeat them for fear of ruining it for anyone, as we do try to keep things leak-free in our community. We don't know too much about this lady at this particular time, so hopefully we'll get a bit more information about that, whether she's a playable character, her role in it. Just quickly going back to that chap we see at the beginning in the cabin, I don't think we're going to see much of him.
No.
Oh, I think he dies from whatever happened.
Yeah, are we thinking the guy? I can't remember his name. The guide from Resident Evil 5 who gets his head chopped off.
Renard.
I was going to say that, but I wasn't confident, and I thought, look at it.
The butchery. Yeah.
The butchery.
I think he's going to last a little bit longer than the other the introduction characters. I think he's going to be around for a little
bit longer. So perhaps he escorts us to said cabin for a drink.
Yeah. No, you get that one scene where you see him outside in the woods hunting. So I'm kind of wondering if you do meet him for a little bit.
You need to be quite a few scenes of him actually thinking about it.
At first, you're in the village, everything's kind of cool. Then when it starts getting darker out, like the other villagers start freaking out a little bit. I'm kind of wondering if the first section is like an open world type deal where you're going around to house and everyone's just kind of freaked the fuck out about what's going on.
That would be really good if you got like a normal village walking around, and then as you say, as nightfall starts to descend, things start going really wrong.
Yeah, you start getting people saying, "Hey, you don't need to be here after dark. You're an outsider. You need to go."
That could be really scary.
That would be because it'd be a bit Silent Hill-esque with the kind of siren, but at the same time, it wouldn't be quite as quick. Perhaps if they could put in like a kind of day-night cycle, it would be gradually getting quiet, and you see the panic, and it would be nice because that would be a bit like 5, wouldn't it? At the beginning, we're kind of wandering around, albeit slightly kind of pre-rendered with Sheva, and then everyone's looking a bit sus, going, "What's going on?" And then suddenly everyone's gone, and you're like, oh dear.
Well, history's just repeating itself, isn't it? Because you got 4, which was like totally self-contained. Then 5 came along and sort of did its thing to make 4 a bit more relevant. 7 comes along, does its own thing, and it now looks like 8's repeating itself again. In that it can make 7 more relevant with the rest of the series. So
well, this is what I was trying to talk about before with this idea about 4's remake, is that you're then trying to connect all these bits together and making them all more relevant.
I've always said you shouldn't judge 7 until 8 because it was a soft reboot, just like 4.
Yeah.
If Resident Evil 8 was going back to C virus or something like that, my feelings to 7 would diminish somewhat. I'd still enjoy it as a game, but I'd be like, and I'd tend to agree with everyone else that it just feels so disjointed, but I can see it becoming a bit more integrated. Okay, let's move on to the next characters, who I think have generated probably the most amount of discussion. The witches, should we say, the elder ladies of the of the trailer, who took. I have to say, for such a fleeting shot, it's point of a second, really, isn't it? They're there. You can see them. People have been able to extrapolate some some images and done some remarkable work in being able to try and decipher perhaps who they are. So this is all pure speculation, so you'll probably listen to this in years to come and go, what the hell are you guys talking about? But that's fine, that's great, that's what we love. So we seemingly have at least 3 witches, but I think there's more than those 3, because I think we've got, let's start with there's an older witch. You can see close up of her face. I think she's very different to these seem to be a bit more younger looking, although they're obviously a bit BOW-y. They seem to be a bit more slender, and their physique seems younger, whereas I think the close-up face suggests that this is more of a, say, stereotypical witch. There's no such thing, but you know what I mean, that kind of with a kind of broomstick and a black cat.
How does it go, Nick?
Can you do that again, please?
You know what I mean. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get quite a large number of weird cultist type characters. But I think they're really exciting. I think they're going to bring quite a lot to the equation. Lots of characters, and I think this is perhaps where 7 did fall a bit. We didn't have many characters, did we? It was all relatively small, and this has introduced quite a lot already. But what was everyone's views on the witches?
Well, I mean, taken out of context in the trailer, they just look like 3 I say well dressed. One of them looks well dressed. The other 2 look a bit
fabulous hat.
But the fan theory that's going around, and I must say the evidence is not bad.
It's not bad.
If Capcom do this is fucking dark. It's really, really dark. And we know, obviously, thanks to leaks, which we'll get into shortly, that this was originally, allegedly, Revelations 3. So if the identities of these witches is as people are theorizing, then it would have worked as a Revelation sequel, because it would have, brought back certain characters. There's no point beating around the bush. The fan theory is due to attire being worn like around the neck, is that the 3 in the main sort of image, one with the hat, is Jessica from Revelations, Natalex, and Claire, isn't it? And Moira.
Yes.
And if that is the case, that's dark.
That'd be good.
It works, though. That's the thing in terms of
the werewolf is Barry.
And that would be a thing that would send Chris over the edge.
It's so elaborate. It's so elaborate, isn't it? It's so ridiculous. It's bordering on fan fiction.
It totally is. But you can't deny, like, the necklace and the other necklace. There's like 2 necklaces, isn't there?
Yeah. They kind of I can't remember I don't know what they're called, but yeah,
there's Moira's chain and there's Natalex's like jewel necklace, isn't there, or something like that?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and
the Jessica hat's a bit of a stretch, but
it is an elaborate hat. It is. It's a big looking hat. It's a big looking kind of hat. If that were the case, and for argument's sake, let's say it's possible, I think again it leads on to this idea of perhaps confronting your greatest fears. Perhaps there is a hallucination element, something that obviously the series has toyed with for many years. With initially 3.5 was going to have it all with kind of tentacle monsters and God knows what, and all the talking dolls, and then 7 brought it in quite tastefully, I think. Perhaps this is just taking it to the next level. If this is true, I don't think they will be there in person. I think it will almost be like Chris has had Scarecrow serum on him, and that's what he's saying. Perhaps they're female characters that are coming towards him, and so his kind of fears are being presented with those three characters as people that have either betrayed him or I don't know. It's still a hard link, isn't it? I mean, I can't imagine Moira's upset him too much.
It's just dark.
It is dark. It is. Yoke, is this the first you've heard of it?
I've seen the whole Jessica thing. I didn't know about the Moira and Natalia stuff. That's actually kind of interesting. I'm not sure how I would feel about that personally. The Jessica part I would love because seeing her come back would be very nice. But the only thing, if she's back, what about the what's the other guy that was in Revelations?
Raymond Vesta.
Vesta,
yeah. If he's in there somewhere, I'd be like, okay, that's definitely Jessica. But I think visually, I like how they all look.
Yeah,
they're not their actual characters, but
we'll see. What about you, Rob? Were you floating this idea or enjoying it for what it is?
I don't know. I feel like people always try and tie things together so neatly all the time. I mean, I can see the evidence. I can go, oh yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I know this is really, really bad, but I think it's too clever to be true. Like I think it's more likely that it's different characters.
I agree with that because for me, it feels like this is going to be another one of those buddy Art Thompson situations where people think it's a returning character, but it's not. It's just someone that looks like him.
Yeah, and I agree with that. To be honest, I don't honestly think it's that theory, but it is interesting nonetheless.
And I mean, there's other things in the trailer which harken back to connecting this game to other games in the scope of things that are beyond 7. Like at one point there's a guy jumping off a roof that got a giant hammery axe thing, which is very Resident Evil 5. Like there's bits throughout this that harken back. So there's definite reason to tie some of that narrative together and put the connection, as you said, of 8 to 7 that ties it back into, and especially if the Revelations thing is true, then and there's definite reason for Alex Wesker, for example, the Alex thing to continue on and her connection to this, but then it doesn't tie into where Revelations 2 was, what the character was looking into. Why would she start all of a sudden be this is like so you have to make an assumptive jump to narrative. There has to be a good reason. Much like I was saying before, I would hope that if that is the case,
it's a big jump. It is a big jump to make, but I wonder. You just got me thinking there, Rob. That I know I've seen some people comment like that jumping BOW with the axe. It is very similar to the Executioner's axe. Quite intentionally. Of all the axes they could have, they picked one very, very similar to the Executioner. And then you go back to the right at the beginning of the trailer. This is the close of the story, and then perhaps there is that inducement. Are we going to almost get like a Chris Redfield greatest hits? He goes through the entire game, the game.
But again, we're playing as Ethan, not Chris. So what's the relevance?
Yeah.
That's the other part you've got to think of. Like for us, that becomes a bigger problem because then it's about the player's recognition, the player who potentially sees things that are familiar from other games they may have played in the series, and then it's not about what the characters experience.
How well known would some of these BOWs be? Like would the Executioner be like something beyond local news in the Resident Evil world?
Probably
not. In today's news,
a
guy with the big fucking axe just walked down 8th Street.
No, I mean, if it actually happened, yeah, sure, it would probably be on the news. But
there's a sequence, I can't remember which game it's in, where 2 Executioners run around New York.
We haven't got that far yet.
Sean. That's good. I like that.
Guys, I'm sorry.
I wish I thought of that. That's really good.
It's all canon now.
That's canon. Even the Anderson movies. That's Fabiano's latest bombshell. Is that? Yeah, that includes the Anderson movies.
Yeah, that all existed in the same universe. It's totally in the same canon. Yeah,
that would be amazing. Fucking hell.
Do we think that the jumping axe character is the same that grabs old Hat Chappie from the cabin, or is that going to be the standard BOW?
I think that's good.
I think that's the standard one because it's just the thing moving around really fast, which I think is the one that you see the close up looking like the werewolf.
Looking like the werewolf, yeah.
There's another shot around the same time as the axe one of that exact enemy, the roaring one attacking Ethan, like trying to bite him or something. So
yeah, from a floorboard, yeah.
Yeah, or no, not from a floorboard, like from the same area where the axe guy is. He's literally grabbing. It's like the shot before or after and he's like grabbing and attacking him. You're talking about the hang. Yeah. We're talking about a completely different thing. Like you're talking about the fact that he gets pulled up. I think it's the ceiling. I don't think it's the floorboard thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about outside. There's the shot in the trailer at one point where you've got like it's soft focus and then it comes to focus a creature roaring. There are two other shots in an outdoor environment. That one's got this axe person leaping off a roof, and the other one has that same building in the background, and there's the werewolf-esque creature attacking Ethan. Close-up shot, coming to bite him or something. And it's a very quick shot. It
just dawned on me. What if Resident Evil 8 is just like a classic monster's greatest hits? You have witches, you have werewolves, possibly vampires, and the Axeman could be Frankenstein's monster.
I think everything's on the table, and this I think that's a very nice segue. I wanted to have a bit of not a moan, but the anti-werewolf brigade, which has erupted since. I mean, Jesus, the fact that this is in the very first game, you get a giant mutant shark, a giant mutant plant, a skinless fly hybrid thing. Then
with claw arms,
and then by the time we get to Resident Evil 6, we've got something that can turn from a T-Rex to a horse. To a big fly. I mean, is it beyond the realms of possibility that we've got a creature that
we don't even.
No, yeah,
Nick, we don't even have to. No. That means I'm going to interrupt. We don't even need to look back at previous games. Just look at the previous title that comes before this one, 7, and look at the sort of. We've got oozing creatures. We've got Marguerite and her like insect. Controlling abdomen ovum thing, honestly, if you're going to complain about this, you might as well have complained about half of that.
Absolutely.
Jack Baker turning into his giant monstrosity, and then it's the same. To me, it's all the same. It's a fantasy environment,
and
you can create interesting creatures and design. And these are werewolf-esque, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's invocative of the werewolf. Doesn't mean it's actual.
Yeah, I mean, there are two things. We're going to get a scientific, it's like in-universe scientific explanation for said werewolf, if you want to call it werewolf. So there's going to be an explanation. And two, I don't think they're going to pull it that when a full moon comes out, it's going to turn into a BOW. If it does, then I might raise some issues.
There's a shot in the trailer at some point as well with some of the witch-like characters controlling, I think it looks like moths or some sort of insect.
Yeah, it does look like a moth.
They're a big swarm, at one point as well, and it's not like anyone's talking about that in the same disregard.
No, exactly. I mean, if I've got to, silver bullets to kill it, I might start taking a bit of, issue. Oh, the vampire, we need to put a stake through its heart. You're like, okay, then we are
silver.
Yeah, we are treading into, very much supernatural.
Ethan starts wearing a chain of garlic.
Garlic. That's the new merchant. It's a garlic seller.
My garlic is not as smelly as it used to be. I need to refresh it with new garlic.
Got some great garlic for sale, stranger.
Got some great things on sale, stranger.
Well, it could be back because there is a currency in the top right-hand corner.
There is a currency.
Welcome back, strange.
And it's another European village essentially. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just don't see any issues at all with a man/dog thing. We've done it.
One thing that confuses me is the same people that are complaining about the werewolves are the same people that are like, "Oh, the giant whale you fight in the first Revelations games was fine."
Was it even a whale? Was it? It was a.
It was like the whale parasite.
It's the parasite. Yeah.
It's like there's something like you're missing here. Like one's completely bad shit that you're with. The other one's okay. You can kind of see. It's just a hairy dude.
Yeah, but it's a C virus mutations I find the most ridiculous, and that was only made plausible by going, oh yeah, the one with the gorilla type one. Yeah, well that's because they put a bit of gorilla DNA into the C virus, and that's the explanation. You go, fine, if that's good enough, then I'm sorry, whatever they've made a werewolf BOW or a dog man type character.
No, I mean, I just looking at the clip of it at the end of the trailer, just roaring, and to be honest, it could just be a bloody zombie with long hair. In that shot,
like a crimson head or something.
Just a very aggressive zombie. Yeah,
someone who hasn't shaved in a while. Maybe that's all it is.
it just comes from that same point.
Been in lockdown.
It comes from that same point again, where it's just like because it doesn't hold to some one standard of what is or isn't a particular Resident Evil game, then it's no longer the right thing. But we've pointed out time and time again, this franchise is whatever the creators want it to be.
Yeah. And it's the reason for its longevity, isn't it? The fact that it has been able to reinvent itself. If it doesn't, it just becomes stale. You look at like Tomb Raider needed a proper reboot. And I think this is the one thing that we have to put into perspective when we're talking about remakes. And even if we didn't want 3 or got this idea of 4, is that they're doing this because they see it as the potential to expand sale, increase interest, create that longevity, create more sequels, create more of the franchise. And to do that, sometimes they're going to change things and rewrite things and put new things and new ideas in. And Sean kind of did say earlier on, it's like it is very good that the franchise can do this. It's adaptable and changeable and do stuff fresh, and it doesn't mean we're always going to agree with it, but we can't. For the people out there who are saying, "Oh, this isn't Resident Evil, or this isn't franchise," or it is. It totally is, because it's malleable. That's what it is. And unfortunately, for good and bad, it is. I'd agree. I think that's absolutely spot on. Let's keep to the Dracula potential theme going on here. The Van Helsing character, maybe, or the Dracula character himself. This glasses wearing interesting man. If you see my reaction, I said Daniel Fabron straight away. I have absolutely no idea whether that's true, and I think it's been, I don't say debunked, but he's wearing quite similar attire in terms of glasses and things like that, and he kind of had that same sort of vibe. Someone actually put it to Capcom's community manager, and she responded and just said, "Yeah, because there's only one person that wears 80s style glasses." So,
That's sarcasm.
It's sarcasm. Yeah, it's sarcasm is all agree. So whether it's direct, but
this is kind of going back to what I was saying about the witches idea, which is that I don't mind the theory. I think it's cool, and I do like the point of this evidence as like believable, but it comes down to the idea that you immediately go, right, it has to all be connected, and that person is this person.
Yeah,
and,
I can't remember the last time it turned out to be we saw someone and everyone thought it was that, and it was. I'm struggling.
I mean, other than the obvious one, like in this case, it's clearly like even if Ethan didn't say the name Chris and they hadn't put it out in the information, everyone would have looked at that and gone, "Oh yeah, okay, that looks pretty much like Chris." Like it's not like the end of 7 where everyone when he says Chris Redfield and everyone's like, "That ain't Chris Redfield." Like,
could you imagine how awful it would be though if some of these theories are true? And like the witches are like the characters from the Revelations games, and it's all a bit tragic because they've all been like turned to villains and things like that. And the tone's really dark and really oppressive, and it's violent and a horrible world to live in. And then this character turns up, takes off his glasses, and says, "Hello, motherfucker." Also, and it's just Daniel Craig with that terrible accent.
Yeah, tonally not a great choice. Yeah.
I'm tired of this shit.
Fucking piece of shit.
What if that's the Merchant Unmasked?
Well, that would be off as well, though, wouldn't it?
I think that your comment about you guys saying the Van Helsing thing, there's a good parallel there that he could be in this concept, not specifically a monster hunter, but he's like the character who's trying to stop whatever's happening. Take down the main monster / person who's leading this thing. I think there's a nice parallel there. That becomes like someone who Ethan kind of works with but doesn't fully trust, and
oh god, it's Louise from 4.
Yeah,
kind of, but even more involved. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, for many, many reasons, Sean just did his wonderful impression. I don't want it to be Daniel Fabron because it then raises all sorts of questions as to whether Resistance is canon and God knows what, and I just can't be dealing with that at the moment. But we'll defer that for a later time. But it could be, it's like when any let's rewind the clock, shall we? When Resistance was revealed. Wearing sunglasses, it's Wesker. We've now got a man with round glasses. It's Daniel Fabron. It's the same, isn't it? It's just history repeating itself over and over again. He's likely to be Klaus Lundekvam from Romania, or someone like that we've never heard of. As you say, he's just there to help.
Was that name again?
Klaus Lundekvam.
Okay.
Yeah, Lundekvam used to play for a football club.
This is a franchise where people like myself once theorized that the merchant in the Resident Evil 4 trailers was Leon undercover infiltrating Stadler's castle.
Good. Oh, that's good.
and the moment where he opened his coat in the trailer was like the Matrix, oh shit moment. I had that theory once. It was a long time ago.
I want to see a fan edit of that.
that is about what, 2004?
So possibly 4. Yeah, it would have been 4 because
Wow. Okay, I don't think we see any other main characters in the trailer, but what I wanted to talk about is what Peter Fabiano actually mentions in the developer's interview. They specifically say that the village itself is a character, which is an interesting concept because they did this on Lost a lot with the island. The developers of Lost felt that the island itself was its own individual character, and they kind of played with the idea of the whispers on the island if you watch that program. And indeed, if you watch the whole series kind of back to back, you get this feeling that the island is part of the long game. I just wonder, and this guy also says what Sean says, so the theory earlier, that perhaps there's a difference at the beginning to when the game starts. Perhaps you can explore a bit before nightfall and that type of thing. It'd be interesting to see how that idea that the village is a character actually plays out in the game.
Indeed, it might be something that it twists and changes throughout the game. Like that'd be like, it'd be very Silent Hill-ish, but if throughout the game the layout of the village changes in an almost weird way, as like if you are hallucinating, the hallucinations take hold. And you go into the village square, and it's different, and the buildings look different, and
it's just an interesting comment, isn't it? I mean, it's not in the Resident Evil series. You would say that the RPD or the Spencer Mansion has its own presence. You wouldn't necessarily say it's its own character, but here they've come out and said quite specifically when designing this game, they wanted to make the village.
Nick, I was going to say, Rob, before you continue, Nick gets his wish that the main hall of a house is going to be the gaming's end boss.
I kind of had it with 7 though.
It's true. You did kind of have it with 7 a little bit. I was going to say, it's important. It's obviously important when you put the name of it in your title. That's probably the biggest clue. It's not even the fact that they said this. Even before they said this, if you've seen the trailer, it's the name of the game. So that's the case. Are we taking bets? There's a lab in under the castle. Or in the castle.
Oh yeah.
What's Romanian for the nest?
Google it. Then
I'll just fire that one up. I'll be back to you in a moment.
Thank you, sir.
I can tell you from having explored Romania myself, I never saw a village that quite looked like this in Romania.
Yeah, they've obviously influenced a bit. The actual Transylvania.
There's research. To be fair, the castle in the wide shot, the castle that's in the back, the tower does look very. They've obviously done a research trip.
Kubal, yeah.
That's how I look at too.
Fucking hell, if I'm playing the game and one of the characters says we have to go down to the Kubal, I'll be like, oh my god.
They did all the experimentation done in the Kubal.
I fear for your TV.
Oh god.
Oh dear.
I wonder if the villagers are going to spout off random things in Romanian too.
It'd be interesting to see how many. I'm sorry. I've just loved this idea of exploring the village when everything is calm. Oh, that's so appealing to me. And I they could make it so good. They could make it like there's a timer. And you can't see the timer, but you can do quite a lot. The quicker you do it, you can explore more, perhaps get a bit more ammunition ready or something like that before dark falls. You don't know it when you're first playing, so perhaps if you're taking your time like we do, we're going to get absolutely punished for exploring. But if you can go, perhaps if you do it faster, you can explore different areas quicker. And it's so intriguing.
There was an early access game, and it's actually been released now, called The Forest, which loads of people will know about. And I remember when they were pitching that originally, they were talking about that during it was a survival game set on an island, and during daylight hours that was when you built your resources and you built your house and you got your weapons ready and things like that. And then as the night fell, the creatures started coming out, and the game never really hit that potential, but I always thought it was a truly frightening concept that you do have a timer, as you say, Nick, and as you start to see the sun falling out of the sky, you think, fucking hell, it's not going to be long now before the creatures awaken. And I'd still like the forest was a nice idea, but I don't ever really fully think it hit that mark. And something like a Resident Evil game doing that with the resources and the budget behind it could realize that. Do you think they'll resist the chance to do a really, really meta gag here, where there's one point where like Ethan's walking around the village and suddenly it's deserted and he hears a commotion coming from like a nearby building, and then as he goes into the building, they're actually playing bingo.
You're going. That'd be great.
Would it?
No,
It'd be fun.
No. You see, oh my god, that's how you're introduced to the old guy. Like, he's running and Ethan's like, where are you going? I'm going to bingo.
Oh god, can they resist?
I hope not.
I wonder as well. I mean, we're going well off piece, but that's fine. There is, of course, the film The Village, which has arguably quite similar concepts, of a village surrounded by forest. Don't go into the forest because of said dangerous creatures. I wonder if that's going to play, that kind of idea that there's going to be safe areas of the village, or perhaps the entire village is, to an extent, relatively safe, but you're going to need to go into dangerous areas such as the forest. I'm just so intrigued by it, and the more like today we've been talking about it, the more excited I'm getting about what possible options there are for this.
I mean, I almost want to go into hyperbole, and they can say this could be one of the best settings they've ever done. In all honesty,
it could be.
If it's done right. I mean, because everyone always acknowledges that the best part of Resident Evil 4 is the village. And the game loses a lot when it goes into the castle. To actually develop like a full, rich experience around this sort of aesthetic could be really, really good. My only fear is it, by the time Remake 4 comes around, will this concept feel fucking overdone?
Yeah,
it just seems almost ridiculous that we're going to get two very similar settings within like a couple of years of each other.
With a castle, a village, especially if they're playing bloody bingo. I mean, Jesus. But
How much would the snow play, though?
Yeah.
Are we going to get jet skis? I'm hoping for that.
The return of the snowmobiles.
The opening of the trailer with the first person bit going through the narrow sort of wooded path. I mean, that could just be an amazing horror set piece for a Resident Evil game. If there's like these wolf creatures fucking running around, and if they can make it like organic enough to like be slightly randomized, so it's not scripted. They come at like different times each time you play. It could be. We're over speculating what won't happen, aren't we? But
it's always been my dream. It's why I do love the forest section in Survivor, because that's what you've just mentioned. There is exactly what could, in theory, happen. Is take out the trash sweepers from Survivor, but that whole scene in pitch blackness, can't see. You can only just see 2 foot in front of you. There's things around you.
Revelations 2's little wooded section was great.
It was indeed. So okay, so that's a really interesting concept, just about how they're going to, as Rob says, in the title. Let's make the most of it. I'm assuming we're having a huge hub area, which of course appeals straight away. So that hub areas are very much a Resident Evil thing. Just if you want to tick that off on the is Resident Evil 8 a Resident Evil game, you can tick that on your little bingo box. Yep, tick. There we go. So we can do that.
I do wonder if they came up with the title first, and then it was like, oh yeah, it's going to be set in the village.
That is my fear. It does have a bit of the Oder. We've made the image of Chris and Leon, and we're going to make a game around it, and with guns pointing at each other. We need to make Resident Evil 8. How can we carry on this stupid tradition of getting VII into our titles? Because it's not just Resident Evil 7 that did it with the VII. We've had Walk Through the Fear,
or VR,
with and Valiant Raid have had this stupid VR thing going on. But Walk Through the Fear is the worst, isn't it?
We're going back to also Deadly Silence.
Deadly Silence. Yeah, exactly. So it's all a bit silly, but let's.
Can you remember? God, is it the UK box art of the remake which says like Pure Terror Cube?
Yes,
and some places even had the actual. It said Resident Evil with the little 3 next to it.
I had a website and it was called Biohazard Cubed, and we were doing that as a launch website before when they first announced the game. And so when Capcom Europe basically took bits of our website, the company that did the marketing. Bits of a website, we were like, "Wow, thanks for the kudos."
Is
we
that
actually
true?
had the website. Yes.
Oh, that's I didn't know that.
I
wow.
worked with Martin, who ran Biohazard Extreme, and we made a website called Biohazard Cubed, and it was a lot of flash animation, which he was really good at. We made an animated map that you could click on, and basically I'd gone through and I'd used PC Vision, the original, and I captured. Capcom had released so many screens of the game. It hadn't come out yet. This is like 4-6 months before it even came out, and they released screens. So I worked out what each of the screens were, like which area of the remake it was, and we made an interactive map, and you click on the room, and the room would pop up, and it would show you the original version and the new version side by side, and we have a little bit of a description. Now, what's interesting about this is a massive sidestep, but this will explain why I know that they did this, is when I made these rooms, I gave each room a name because we had to for the map. So I made up unique names for the ones that weren't obvious. Then Capcom Europe hired a company to make their official website, and they did the same thing with the map, and the map had some of my names in it.
No, wow.
And they're the same one that, because at the time I think Capcom Europe actually had not officially opened its branch, so they'd obviously hired other companies to do its marketing and stuff. So they basically saw our website and went, "Ooh, Cubed, that's a good idea. Let's put that in the marketing campaign." And so as part of that website and the design, the whole Terra Cubed, all that sort of stuff, all came from the fact that we created this website. True story.
See, this is why we have you on your team, Rob. I
always knew you worked for Capcom.
That's fascinating. So my copy of Resident Evil Remake is you're a part of it, Rob. That's
unintentionally, yes.
I feel really left out because Sean's in Resident Evil 5.
As is Yoke.
As is Yoke. You're in Resident...
And me, I'm in there as well.
What am I doing? I'm writing fucking editorials on Confidential Report going, hello.
Hey, when the Confidential Report remake comes out,
yeah,
there's probably a Neptune
go
around some.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. Thanks, Rob. That's really. I like that story. That's a good story.
This is absolutely fascinating, Rob. If you'd carried on this trajectory, I genuinely think you'd be like Resident Evil president now, literally running the franchise. This is fascinating. If people who've been listening to the podcast over the years, this is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the stuff that Rob talks about. But, even now he's just dropping these bombshells on us.
He's been around. This
is why I'm a crusty old webmaster. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and far too many years, and I'm amazed I still am even wanting to spend hours talking about this franchise at this point.
Oh, super. Okay, wow. We've kind of crossed off a lot of the characters here. So, and we've in terms of the storyline, we've had a good discussion about what may or may not happen. Probably more so on the may not, but that's all part of the fun. In the developer video, I've already mentioned it. They released that artwork, and there's been a few theories flying around whether this, apart from having that kind of fetus in the middle, which potentially links to the mold, and of course with Ethan's presence, that's possibly correct. It is a bit umbrella-y. If you look, because it's
the feathers,
the feathers
create a negative space where it would be the parts of the umbrella logo. Yeah.
It is, and if it can be a bit difficult to see, but take a good look, and you've got this guy. It is very purposefully shaped, I think. Now, of course, we could be clutching at straws, but of course, in the trailer, we do see a very fleeting glance of the umbrella logo. Whether it is blue umbrella or red umbrella, or the original umbrella, we don't know.
I think it's far older than that.
I was going to say it would the being that it's part of a village and being part of this old mystique. I would say the implication is like part of Umbrella's history.
This is Spencer's other estate.
Another one. Well, let's quickly.
It's Spencer's castle.
Spencer's castle.
Another estate. It's Spencer's castle.
I think Batman mentioned to us that it looks like where that umbrella logo is, it's got there's other kind of emblems around them.
One's like a horseshoe and that you can see.
Very Resident
I like the
Evil
theory that the other one is an Ashford logo.
I'm struggling. I know. I think that people are saying, is it the four? Well, I say there's only 4 founding members of Umbrella. I mean, there's only 3, but it's. I'm clutching at the Ashford. I think it's clutching at the Ashford.
It's a very blurry image. It's like, that looks like an eagle. It looks like a blur.
Yeah, and no offense, a bloody horseshoe and a horse isn't going to be that. It's not exactly
How crazy would it be if this game is like, no, there was a fourth member of founder of Umbrella that was just like kicked out early on, and this is his like little area.
Possible. It is possible.
Let's just keep these retcons going, you know.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I just don't see. I can't see.
And
As you said,
that's the leader of the connections.
Well, that's another storyline. Are we going to get the connections storyline coming back into?
Well, you'd hope so, which is why they drastically reworked Not a Hero, wasn't it? Because Not a Hero was originally supposed to have Chris getting the list of the connections names, and they changed that. And you'd think they would have changed it for a very specific reason.
Yeah. I think what I'm intrigued about is that we have Umbrella mentioned at all, because if we remember, the kind of like tidbit of 7, or the kind of like lingering point, is that HCF were involved quite early on in the noughties, in the 2000s, with the development of the A series, presumably under Wesker's influence and control. But of course, he wouldn't have been part of Umbrella at that point. One would hope that we're going to get a bit more storyline focusing on the connections and perhaps even HCF's involvement, whether and the rival organisation. Why is Umbrella logo there? That's a really intriguing point. One I'm looking forward to finding out.
And someone on our Discord today has actually linked. There's grabbed a couple of screen grabs from the hat wearing lady, and in them is emblems that are not a match, but look suspiciously like the 3.5 stylish version, if you like, the one that became Devil May Cry of that version's Umbrella logo, which was blue Umbrella, and it had crow feathers on either side of it. So it certainly looks like they're using some of those original ideas. And this is not the first time the series has done that.
Oh no.
The series is well known for sort of picking ideas from previous games that, previously shelved ideas, should I say, and then reworking them and reinventing them in a later game. The use of the crow feathers is really interesting because it is a total like for that original logo.
Absolutely. Capcom, if they've got a good idea, they'll use it again. I mean, Resident Evil Gaiden has basically been remade, combining Resident Evil Revelations 1, kind of cruise ship, dissolving creatures in a kind of amoeba type thing, and then, and Revelations 2, we kind of have Barry looking after a young girl that's got special powers. That's basically Gaiden. So, they've used that idea from a non-canonical game into a canonical game. So we could see lots of ideas from perhaps 3.5 being implemented, whether they've gone back, they've got notes on what they were going to do, and go, oh, yeah, we could bring that back. I think Batman mentioned that he probably thinks where that Umbrella logo is, it's a puzzle. It looks very puzzly. Perhaps you need all four keys, a horseshoe key and the whatever keys, or perhaps you need some orbs or something like that to progress.
Could be different sections of the castle, kind of like in 7, where you had to have the crow key and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything like that. I think that's more than feasible. I don't think Umbrella are going to have a huge role in this at all.
Last 5 minutes, just an entire files about Umbrella.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like 7.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 5. Where you get you get all the history of Marcus and Bailey and something like that. They're really cool moments, but that's it for Umbrella, isn't it? So I wonder if we get something like that. Any thoughts, perhaps Plagas involved? Because this fetus has got kind of like tentacles-ish, or do you think we're going to keep...
I want to say it's still mold.
Still think mold, yeah.
I think I agree with some of the rumors that this is the origin of where the mold was.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? It goes back to the idea that perhaps it looks like this village has been long lived in, and these stories, the fact that Mia knows this story, and presumably she's singing it to a child across the world, it's long been talked about.
It ties in the idea of having old Umbrella here too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if y'all saw I'm actually kind of amazed how people are pointing stuff out, the image of I guess it's Ethan with a beard, or is that Chris behind a mountain, and you see mold on him. People thought it was blood at first, but looking at it, it's all black and looks very much like the mold.
That's Chris, isn't it? Yeah, that really cool close-up artwork. Definitely got mold on him. But we know Chris don't take no shit. I think when Rebecca said, "Do you want some hazmat protection suit in Vendetta?"
That's fine.
He's like, whatever, mate, whatever. So lots of story hints, lots of hopefully kind of history of mold. That will be obviously a direct continuation of 7, and we've got the artwork that kind of hints at it. All quite exciting, but we're kind of wrapping up slightly sour point is that you will no doubt know that perhaps to a lot of people this trailer wasn't a shock or surprise, because as of, I think, March, if not earlier, such rumours were already flying around with leaks on Twitter and then subsequently on YouTube, then all the major gaming websites. So as much as I personally was quite shocked about how it all looked and how great it all looked, part of me was going, these rumours were true. Now, at the Resident Evil podcast, we don't really like to talk about leaks because all of us love going through these games completely blinded. Well, but completely blindfolded, should we say. There's nothing greater about experiencing a game firsthand, not knowing anything. And I admire anyone that can do it completely blind, because in today's society it's near impossible to do so. But we will never report on rumours. We'll never do a video or anything like that to say these are the latest rumours from Resident Evil 8. To me, it's just a bit clickbaity, and it ruins it because I personally don't want to see it. I've said it before to everyone on Discord and to my friends. It's like if I had known everything about 7, I never would have got that moment where I picked up the file and read HTF. That oh my god, that's what you live for in any media, not just games, just to have that shock. And we really, really try to discourage it on our Discord, but you can be assured that we won't ever do videos or put Facebook posts or tweet or Instagram posts or anything like that to spoilers or links to spoilers, because we don't like it. And sadly, it's becoming quite endemic in this community, at least, that we're getting all these leaks. And I would be amazed if this game, if it is released in, say, March, April 2021, that this whole game will not be leaked by then.
I think the community needs to really look itself at the minute, and I don't want to do this. This sucks to have to actually say this, but I think the community as a whole needs to do better. I think there's been some really, really poor displays of very, very popular fan sites, and we made a sort of discussion at the beginning before we recorded that we're not going to mention any names. We're not like that on the podcast. We're not going to do anything like that, but as a community, we need to do better, because we're spoiling experiences for ourselves. There was so much about Resident Evil 8 that we knew before the trailer came out, and I personally will never ever know what my experience or reaction would have been, whether it was good, bad, emotional, whatever, to the trailer, because instead I just sat there going, oh yeah, all the leaks were correct. Now, I've had people come up to me, some quite hostile people come up to me on Twitter, actually, when I've made these complaints and things in the past, saying, well, why don't you just block the individuals that are doing it? Why don't you just mute the words on Twitter? Because I shouldn't have to. I want to discuss this series, and I don't want to have to mute the words Resident Evil 8 on Twitter just so I can avoid being spoiled. That's down to the responsibility of other fans not wanting to spoil the experience for everybody else. Putting leaks as part of your YouTube title is not cool, because you can't avoid that very easily. All you need is one retweet, and you've had something massive spoiled about the game. People are doing this. As we're recording it right now, there's people putting up leaks as retweets. They're putting it up as YouTube titles. You can't avoid everything unless you literally go off the internet. And why should you? Why should you have to do that? We really just need to do better as a whole to, these games don't come around often. As much as we've had a really good run of them lately in terms of sort of output, one a year nearly, they still don't come. The sort of the main number titles that are bringing in new storyline don't come around often. And it's just just sort of me pleading to the community, please just don't spoil these experiences for everybody. If you're happy to look at leaks, that's absolutely fine, but don't retweet them. Don't put them out for everybody else, because not everybody wants to know the identity of the sunglasses wearing character, and that's out there on Twitter if you've seen the leaks, and that's just not cool. And I'm ranting now and I'm going to stop, but I just really hope that some people in the community can hear what I'm saying and share that sentiment and just agree that we just need to do better as a community, because it just sucks. And I hate being on the Resident Evil podcast. We've made this sort of hard stance on leaks, and it just sometimes it feels like we're the only people out there who want to do it. Sometimes I know our friends at First Aid Spray adopt the same rule, and that's really heartwarming to see. But there just seems to be so much like to just chase the next scoop, the next clickbait, and it's really disappointing. Really disappointing. I'm sorry to have to sort of end on a sour note, but It needs to be said.
I'm gonna concur. My thing of the last week is that people have had what you would expect as a normal reaction to the reveal trailer, which is to go, "Oh, that was interesting," or "What does that mean?" and stuff. The questions that are being asked. That's the point of the stuff in the trailer, is that you're left with a bunch of interesting concepts, and if you hadn't seen any or heard anything beforehand, and those are going to be your natural reactions. Problem is that other people who do know what's going on or know more information are coming and going, wow, actually, this thing here with the blah, 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 this is explained because that character's blah, blah, blah. Or worse even still, that'll be explained because, they're going to have this bit about it. And they're kind of vague, they use vague terms to kind of spoil but not spoil. And it's so much worse. Like, it's one or the other. Like, people are just directly spoiling or making thinly veiled comments because they know something that the other people don't, and kind of lording it over them almost. But it's almost as bad because you're setting up expectations too. And I just, on top of what you're saying, Sean, I want the community to think about also the way they approach responding to other people. If they know more information, don't either blatantly just respond and say, well, actually, you're not worth asking that question because the information's already out there if you looked, or kind of lording it over them, because you're not helping the situation either. You're putting expectations into people's heads and making the whole situation worse. Just take what's been shown publicly as that's all there is, and if you know more, great. But you don't need to like blast it out to everyone. If people want to know those spoilers, they'll go look them up. They're out there. The first people who put them out there, then they'll be there, and that's fine. But people should have a choice to see those spoilers. They shouldn't have them thrust upon them.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's just annoying more than anything else, and I just don't see the benefit. And as I said, lasting till next year is gonna. Congratulations.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fully admitting that I do that too. But my thing, and I agree with Sean, is that I don't really on Twitter. I don't really think about stuff. I see like, oh, there's that information. I just assume that it's already been announced before, and I just hit like and retweet it. It's really kind of annoying that I have to, double check and be like, okay, that's actually a rumor, that's a leak. Okay, I shouldn't do anything with that.
It's tough. I absolutely. It is hard to keep up to track with what's known information. If you know,
it feels hard to police as well on like the Discord, because some people are just like innocently reposting stuff because that's a similar sort of thing to what you've just said, Yoke. You don't know whether it's come from an official source or whether it's a leak, so people just share it with the kindness of the heart, saying, "Oh, like look at this information," and then we have to come down quite hard on them, saying, "Oh, actually that's a leak, and you really shouldn't be sharing it." And you almost feel bad because these people don't mean any sort of ill will here. They don't mean to do it, but then like they themselves aren't aware it has come from a leak, and it's nearly impossible to police.
Oh yeah, especially like with the werewolf thing, where the huge reaction was, "What the fuck, werewolves?" It was everywhere.
That's the biggest point. Is that if this was limited to a particular Discord or even Reddit, for fuck's sake, you can actively avoid a lot of these. But
I've talked about this in regards to the Resident Evil 3 remake as well, which is there was a difference between stuff that Capcom will put out publicly, which obviously is them controlling the level of information they want to show and what enemies they want to showcase and so forth, as opposed to when that same information is leaked. The way it's disseminated between people was much more different. If Capcom puts it up, people do retweet it, and obviously they go, Capcom's put this information, but they generally only just link the source to that reveal because it came directly from Capcom or a particular, say IGN had an exclusive or whatever it is. It's on Eurogame or whatever. They'll put that link, and it's uniform. It's always that, and the people always have a choice to whether or not they click that link or not. But when it's something that's kind of leaked its way out there, there's a way it's handled differently. The way people react and discuss it is very different. Oh, did you hear this? Blah blah. Or as very well pointed out here, by Yoke, is like the werewolves thing immediately became like that's the touchstone. Whoa, did you hear they're putting werewolves in Resident Evil? That's pretty crazy. I don't think werewolves belong in that franchise. They have zombies, but not werewolves. And then it's everywhere. And then you've got these major websites posting up saying, well, the rumors are the next game, a Resident Evil Village, and there's werewolves because it was on this fan site and this particular website and this particular person said this and it.
There's no, I can't imagine there's anyone that saw this trailer without knowing the possibility of werewolves being in this, or werewolf type creature being in it.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm more in the sense that anyone who really, really cares about this franchise has probably heard of it. There were plenty of people out there who have passing interest in the franchise, and we're just checking out the PlayStation 5 trailers and went, oh wow, new Resident Evil, awesome, like that looked pretty crazy or whatever. But people who are in the community, definitely, I don't think find many people who hadn't heard at least something from these leaks.
This is a series that's based so much around sort of mystery as well, and like some of the very best experiences I've ever had being part of this community has been the back and forths trying to guess what like the next game's about. You should be looking at these characters in this trailer, kind of what we've done tonight, speculating who they are. The identity of like the four ladies, for example, is a really good discussion point. If that had been leaked, and thankfully I don't think they have, but you're potentially taking away months of really good discussion and ideas being thrown around just so someone can come along and go, well, actually, it's this person, this person, this person.
And worse even, Sean, in this case, like say someone's made this guess as to who they are, and then just someone comes in and goes, oh, actually, yeah, you're completely right. It's totally 100% true because of blah, 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 and blah, blah, and just ruins that mystique of it too. Like, we've got that waiting to when the game comes out to find out what that is, and all of a sudden someone just comes on and goes, is able to confirm or deny that's even a possibility. You shut down that line of conversation or interest or mystery.
This isn't a Mario game where you know the storyline before. This is, there's lots of interesting stuff going on here, and it is a shame. But I want to end on some on a positive note. But I think it's really important, and we wanted to have our rant because that's unfair. I think just to put it out there, our kind of feelings on leaks and spoilers going forward. And I echo what Sean says. I just hope we do get better as a community because it's just unfair, and I don't like it. Positives. What the first person view has always been a bit controversial. I'm very much in favour of it. I think it adds a lot of immersion, and we know the RE engine handles first person very well indeed. I know some people prefer the third person from Resident Evil 2, which is fair enough. I'm just happy we've got a bit of consistency with the titles going forward. But what's everyone's kind of hopes with the game? What when you finished it and it says thanks for playing, what do you hope you've got out of it in terms of an experience, perhaps storyline wise or perhaps emotionally? Emotional wise, because some games you feel exhausted by the end because of the experience you've gone through. What's everyone's hope and ambition here?
Just that they continue to sort of try and innovate and keep it fresh. Whether that means making Chris a villain, I don't know. I hope there's going to be, and there will be more to it than that. It's not going to be as clean cut as the trailer. The sort of one of the biggest compliments I can give the trailer is the fact that it's shown a bit, but still not really enough to piece together anything. And that's what I love. It goes back to what we've just said. I love the mystery. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is speculating over the next few months what this is going to be. And, the August announcement's going to be interesting because you say, Nick, it's probably going to elaborate on the characters. In terms of like what I hope and expect, I'm really open-minded to what the game can present. I still hope it's a VR experience. Which I assume it will be, although they haven't said. And so I'm totally open-minded with what they want to do. And you know what? I can do this because it's not a fucking remake.
Rob, what do you hope to gain from this experience?
I think that the positive, like you just talking about the first perspective, I'm going to this game knowing that sort of the core mechanic gameplay experience it's going to be similar to 7, and I find that fine. Like perspective wise, I can understand people's concerns, but at least from a gameplay perspective, I know what I'm expecting. And I mean, the developers in the developers video said they're going to make this a little bit action oriented compared to 7, and I kind of get that makes sense given what they've shown in the trailer, like the sort of enemies you're going up in the environment. I mean, I'm just happy for a story that moves forward that has surprises in it. I mean, we've talked about this before in 7, but that getting near the end of that game and finding the file with the HCF reference in it, like, oh, holy crap, like I was not expecting that. I want more of those little moments. So if stuff in there that all of a sudden, as a long time fan, even just little nuggets that make me just go, oh, that connects to this and that connects to, oh, that's interesting, I'll be happy. And if the main story is well enough told and the characters, then it sit fine. I'm just hopeful, they've made an important thing about making this the new title. See, there's questions about the title, the 8 in the title, whether or not it's important or not, but obviously that still tells you, then putting that room, this is the next in the mainline series. So I'm sure it comes with all the weight of that.
I'm calling it Resident Evil 8, and I don't care anyone who says otherwise.
I'll be interested to see where we sit in time.
Yeah.
After the game's probably out.
Now, Yoke, for someone that was fairly meh towards the trailer, what do you hope when you play it? What do you hope to take from it?
I'm still gonna buy it. That's definite. Yeah. Even though I can be as cynical and be like, "Oh, fuck this game," I'm still gonna buy it because I'm a sucker. The main thing I can hope for is to finally get like a proper story again. Because to me, ever since 5, it's just kind of been spinning the wheels with, okay, we don't have a proper villain anymore. It's just kind of ambiguous about what's going on. I'm kind of hoping we get more about Blue Umbrella, about what's actually going on with that. I am glad that First Person is staying, because that gives me hope that Survivor will be remade one day.
Yes, absolutely.
But it doesn't seem like it's ramping up to be a really good survival horror experience, especially in the setting. That is one thing I will give it, is it looks very nice.
I'd agree, absolutely. And, I'd like something like, the connections end up being another name for the family or just a group within the family, because that whole storyline seems totally separate at the moment.
That's one thing I'm worried about, is like, Connections was just a throwaway name in 7. We're never going to hear about it.
That was. I hope it's in it, and I hope it relates to 6 in some manner. But we shall see. But I think there's a lot of scope. There's a potential with this game. It looks superb graphically, as one would expect. Still hoping it comes out on PlayStation 4, but I think my hope may be misguided.
Saving up those dollars.
I will start saving. I'm gonna have to
get a GoFundMe for you.
At least the PS5, you can buy it with a 4K Blu-ray.
I've just bought a 4K Blu-ray.
Should have saved those dollars, Nick. Should have saved those dollars.
Should have
spent all that money on the Resident Evil movie.
Yes. That does conclude our discussion on Resident Evil 8. Our preview, no doubt, will have significantly more discussion. We'll probably have a final preview podcast, and then, of course, our big podcast. But, I mean, we're talking a long time away. But we're, as you can see, I think we're all excited, apprehensive, concerned. But that's the standard feelings of most mainline games. If this perhaps was Revelations 3, you'd be a bit more blasé. But this is not. This is Resident Evil 8, where this is the big boys coming out to play, and we want to see it done well. So fingers crossed, and let's hope we are not, when we have our next podcast, we don't know the entire storyline already. So let's keep that suspense going. So that does finish our discussion. So we'll now move on to our final part of the podcast. It is, of course, Neptune's Biohazard quiz.
For the past 8 years and 5 seasons, we have brought you groundbreaking lore, in-depth analysis, game reviews, and high-quality content. We've also brought you untold controversies and countless tales of underhand tactics, all in aid of the quiz.
I'd just like to announce, everybody, that this is 0 points for me this week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So my nomination person said 7, but I didn't agree with 7. I said it was 17, and then you said it was 17.
I didn't want people to think I'm cheating by just saying the same number that someone else has said, so I just the next number that sounds similar to 17. I swear I did not cheat, Yoke!
Jesus Christ. That's a fucking question, isn't it?
Quite frankly, if we only got 1 point and that's the winning score, then we're not doing our jobs right, and we're all going to have to hand in our Biohazard cards.
Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard quiz. Batman. Stars Tyrant. George Trevor. Rombie the Predator. Mr. Spencer. Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
So welcome one and all, it's Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Yoke, when was the last time you did a Biohazard Quiz with us? Quite a while ago, I think.
On the Zero podcast, and shockingly, I got 0 answers correct.
Oh my days, well...
I don't foresee that changing anytime soon.
Well, let's have a go. You know the same rules as last time. 5 questions. I'll go through the questions and then we'll come back to you with some answers. If you can clear your desktops, you can open up Notepad. Let's go.
Can I use the George Trevor rules and be able to use Google?
Please not. Yes. Question 1. In the original Resident Evil game, which crank do you find close to Enrico? 50-50 really, isn't it, folks? But there we go. Okay, question number 2. What item do you need to give to Ben in desperate times? 2 possible answers here. I'll, kind of... You'll see what I mean if you get it, but there's a special item you can give to Ben in desperate times. What is it? Question number 3. This is quite tricky. What number is on the lift key in Resident Evil Revelations? Question number 4. We've been talking about C-Virus BOW, so let's see how well you know. You probably need JC Wesker for this one. But what is the name of the C-Virus BOW that erupts from the chrysalid as a lizard-type creature? There's quite a few.
I hate this quiz so much.
So, how well do you know your Resident Evil 6 BOWs? And finally, question number 5. What melee weapon do you unlock if you complete Resident Evil 7 in under 4 hours? These are the 5 questions. Join us after this when we'll run through those answers.
Time to grab the data and get out.
You didn't say the magic word.
Wesker. God. 7 minutes. Planet. Cretins. Hair gel. Bitch.
Magic word.
How is this possible? Ouroboros. Natural selection. Jill. Shava.
It's me, Mario.
I'm a scat man.
Hello there.
Wesker Jr. DNA. Time. Press.
Magic word.
Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
Pitiful.
So welcome back to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Let's see how everyone has done. So question number 1. In the original Resident Evil, what crank do you find close to Enrico? So Tyrant, we'll start with you.
I believe it is Hex.
Gone for the hex crank. Rombie?
Hexagonal.
You went for the hexagonal crank. Yoke, what did you put?
I put square.
It's the hex crank, I'm afraid. It is the hex crank. Yeah, it's the square crank's a bit earlier on in the game. Points there to Rob and Stars Tyrant. That was probably the easiest question, Yoke.
I don't know what to tell you. All those hours playing Umbrella Corps and Operation Raccoon City is just fried my mind.
Yeah,
extinction.
I get told off if I put those orc questions in. Anyway, question number 2. What item do you need to give to Ben in desperate times? We'll start with you this time, Yoke.
I don't play Outbreak. A coin?
Okay.
I guess. I don't.
Okay. Rombie?
I have no idea. No idea.
Stars Tyrant, hero of Raccoon City?
It's something like either like a newspaper report or a diary, like a file, like a police file, like a confidential file, like a confidential report or something. But in all honesty, Nick, I cannot remember the name of either of them. There's 2 I think you can give him, and I can't remember the names of either of them, but I'm sure they're like a newspaper or a report or a file.
You're trying to sweeten the quiz master.
No,
confidential
I'm
report. Correct, yes. You give him a secret file which has the bribery amounts on it for...
I knew I should have fucking put confidential reports, man.
They are actually secret files now, aren't they? Yeah, you've jogged my memory.
Yeah, we go. So point there, 2 stars. I'll give you that one. Very good. So what number is on the lift key in Revelations? Rob, start with you this time.
I was saying I can't remember at all. Revelations is one of my least favourite games.
Are you going to guess a number, though?
7.
7. Okay. Yoke?
I'll go with 47.
47. Stars Tyrant?
I'll go for 407. I have no idea.
No, it's number 4, so you all got quite close, but not quite close
Wow.
enough. So there we go. That was tough.
I was the closest, yes. I guess 7. That's the closest to 4 out of all those numbers.
That is factually correct, yes.
Mine had a 7 in it.
You had a 4 and a 7 in yours.
No points for anyone. Question number 4. What is the name of the sea virus BOW that erupts from the chrysalis as a lizard-type creature? Stars Tyrant.
I believe it is the Strelats.
Strelat. Interesting. Okay, Rob?
I honestly can't remember most of them. They're terrible. The only one I can even remember is that was a Napad or whatever, and so I don't think it's that. I'll say that, but I can't remember.
Napad. Okay, Yoke?
The only one I know of, and I know it's wrong, but the Lepicita. I know it's wrong, but that's the only one I know.
It's points to Stars Tyrant. It is the Strelat. Very good. See? Your Resident Evil 6 playthrough has helped.
Okay. Yeah, Yoke was on it.
I don't remember nothing from it.
Snowmobiles, all I remember.
Yeah, also doing the playthrough with JC Wesker, I'm like, I don't fucking know any of this. And
there is a lot to remember. And finally, question number 5. What melee weapon do you unlock in Resident Evil 7 if you complete it under 4 hours? Yoke, did you know this one?
Buzzsaw.
Buzzsaw. Okay, Rombie?
Circular Saw.
Circular Saw. Stars Tyrant?
I had Circular Saw.
I'm going to give you all a point. It is the Circular Saw, Buzzsaw, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's fine. So points there to everyone. So well done. That does conclude. So let's have a look at those final scores. The strongest player, because he's holding everyone up, is Yoke with 1 point.
Is this what's going to be every time I come on a podcast? I'm just going to get another point. So it's going to be 2 next.
We'll get there. Another 4 podcasts will get you there. Second place is Rob with 2 points. But this podcast winner with a very respectable 4 out of 5 is Stars Tyrant.
You were good to give me the bad one though, really.
Oh well, no, you said 5.
Should have named it by the.
Well, you still would have won.
Thank you. You can look forward to me crushing back down to earth with a 0 next time.
Very good. So congratulations, Stars Tyrant. That finishes Neptune's Biohazard quiz. Join us next time when we'll have some more questions. Thank you, everyone, for listening. There's been I do like our reveal podcasts a lot. We do. You can listen back to a lot of our older ones. They're always quite interesting because we usually weigh out on some things, but sometimes we can get some ideas and theories spot on, which is always quite exciting to listen back. So I really like these ones. Just speculation overboard, no review of the game. Just let your minds run wild. So that's always exciting. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next up, I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, obviously we'll talk about Resident Evil 8 short. When the reveal, but I will say this: Biohazard Stars 3 is in the works. It's being prepared as we speak, so I'm hoping we can get that relatively shortly. Otherwise, we'll keep posted on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our Discord about the next podcast.
I know some people have asked as well, Nick, about the lore podcast for Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I think we're all in agreement that it's on a hiatus of sorts at the moment, isn't it?
On a bit of hiatus, yeah. So I've got my video coming out, which will hopefully keep everyone ticked over for the time being. But yeah, it's difficult, the lore one, because it's pure speculation. We've kind of had a bit of it today, I suppose, haven't we, with talking about the kind of Plagas. Is it one of these things we just have to... we'll put it on hiatus, and if by the end of the year the situation has not improved, by that I mean, as kind of Sean alluded to, Capcom haven't made a statement about what's going on with the canon, I think it may be wise to bring it back in and then have that discussion. A key point is, as Rob said, they're not about to, and then Sean said, sorry, they're not about to start saying, oh yeah, Resident Evil 3 Remake is our brand new game, yeah, but don't worry about the storyline. They're not going to be doing that, but as we get closer to Resident Evil 8, they may be a bit more willing to discuss with the fans exactly where they see the storyline going, because obviously 8 is a direct continuation of 7, which in itself is a direct continuation of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we shall see. So that's going to be on hiatus. We'll probably, as I said, hope if nothing's happened on the lore, we'll probably do that towards the end of the year. let's hope we don't have to do it. I think that's the important point that we can raise. So we'll keep everyone posted as what we want to do. Feel free to send some suggestions in what other main podcast topics you'd like to hear. I'm still pushing for a Gaiden one, but I'm coming up against a brick wall, ladies and gentlemen. So I will keep trying. On that note, again, thank you everyone for listening. It is goodbye from me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, Rombie.
And goodbye from me, Yoke.
In the heart of Transylvania, in the vampire hall of fame, yeah, there's not a vampire any other. He won't bite beast the man, cause he's a vegetarian again, and things never went blindfold.
Don't kill her.
If you're looking for some fun, you can always count upon the wild one they call.
Don't kill her.
Count Duckula.